What's going on? 6 o'clock. Good morning from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I'm Robert Walsh. Packers stunning the Cowboys 48-32 in Dallas. Jordan Love threw 3 scores. Aaron Jones had another 3. Green Bay now travels to the number 1 seed San Francisco. Dak Prescott throwing a pick 6 to Darnell Savage. Jerry Jones said after the game that he hasn't thought about a coaching change with Mike McCarthy just yet. And in the nightcap, Detroit got their first playoff win since the 91 season, 24-23 over the Rams. Jared Goff scoring a touchdown against his former team, while David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs both scored one on the ground. The Lions will host the winner of today's game against the Bucs and the Eagles. And today, 104.5 The Zone regular programming will end at 3 as we carry the Bills and Steelers game. Kickoff is at 3:30, followed by Bucs and Eagles at 7:15. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and the Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Monday morning on RKW with lots of football to discuss. A coaching search that continues for the Tennessee Titans. And like the song says, despite the snow, the show goes on. With Kayla Anderson, Robert Walsh, our producer, Ramon Foster with the morning off. My name is Will Bowling. Monday morning, January the 15th, in a snow-covered Nashville, Tennessee. Good morning, everyone. How are we?
Good morning. We're good. We all made it here safe, and we actually all were here early. We're just so we're so good at what we do, I guess, in terms of being prepared.
That's right.
Right?
We have braved the elements. It is fresh powder to drive on this morning. This is the first time, guys, that I've ever even tried to do what we just did, and it worked out. We are here in one piece.
Yes, and it was kind of fun, actually, driving in on the snow. I went about 15 miles an hour, but other than that,
Right?
there was no cars around me, so I felt like, all right, might as well take my time.
Even at that speed, you kicked it into high gear more than the Dallas Cowboys did last night. So if you had 6:02 in 50 seconds as the first Dallas Cowboys joke of the morning, then please collect your winnings at the pay window. So how much you have experience driving in this, I guess, being from where you are?
Spokane, Washington,
Yeah.
yeah. Because people don't understand, Seattle actually does not get snow.
Okay.
And when they do get snow, it's really a whole catastrophe. Like everybody shuts down the city. You know, it's just wild over there. Where on the east side of Washington State, it's where you get all the snow. And so growing up, we lived on a hill. And the snow, like when we'd get it big, the snow buses would have to put chains on. And they'd have to go up that hill. And I remember as a kid, one day, that snow caused the bus to, let's just say, spin down the hill.
Oh, gosh.
And so I'll never forget that experience. I felt like I was on like a roller coaster ride or something. We were safe and everything. But like that was the thing. If it snowed, even if it was a big snow, you put those chains on and you go to school. So,
Goodness.
yeah. So I grew up to learn how to drive in that stuff. Else I would have been, you know what, out of luck.
Right. Robert Walsh in the Carolinas. Is there much more snow than there is here? Really?
It's been a while since I've seen this much snow in North Carolina, but whenever it's kind of like here, whenever you get it, you're going to get it. And it's only going to be for those few days, and then you don't see it again for another year.
Fair enough.
So similar. And you guys just growing up, I would assume Nashville was, because temperatures have changed a little in terms of
A little bit.
how much we get in tornadoes and snow. So was there more snow now than it was growing up with you here?
I would say it's about the same, but it is like the way it is now, where once every about 3 to 4 years, you just get a huge one.
Okay.
And the biggest one, I remember, I was in first grade, so I'm trying to think backwards because I always remember which year I was in sixth grade. So that would have been 2003, I believe. No, 2002. 2002, where we had a very big snow I believe that's right. Either 02 or 03. And it was like 6 inches. And we got dropped off on the bus. And then before we could even get out of like the lunchroom, they were like, hey, actually get back on the bus. You need to go back home. And anyone who's listening to this story remembers that snow because all of it fell within about an hour.
Oh, dang.
And genuinely, by the time I got home and then my brother and sister were getting home, which that's the fun part of the story, there were about 4 inches that had fallen in about an hour. So what happened was I got home fine, and because I was in public elementary school and it was easy, and like school bus gets you back home. And then my brother and sister were not quite back yet, and they were in their nicer like dress code clothes for high school. And so the story goes basically that I believe it was my brother had to get out and push their car up our hill back home, and they were in like Sperry's or like dress clothes or something of that nature. And it did not go particularly well for them in that scenario. The best story I have of snow, though, here is I had to get to school for something on, I believe it was a Saturday, and it snowed this much. And there's no sympathy for like a Saturday, like extra like practice or rehearsal. I think it was like something singing I was doing. And we literally got rakes and a shovel, and all we could shovel were tire tracks out of our really steep driveway. So I was in high school, and we literally we shoveled 2 tire tracks, and that was it because we couldn't shovel the whole thing.
You know what's funny is people think that their 2-wheel, like rear wheel drive cars are going to get through this. So driving in, I don't know if you guys look around, but sometimes you see people that can't get out of their, apartment building, driveways, whatever it might be.
Yep.
I've seen a few of those. So real quick, when we moved from Montgomery, Alabama, back home to Spokane where I got a job, Travis is from the South. He's from Auburn, Opelika. He does not know what snow, he didn't know what snow was.
Yep.
I had a Toyota 4Runner. Now, wouldn't you guys think that a 4Runner is 4-wheel drive?
That would make sense, yes.
Right. So we get up there. He's got his truck that's not 4-wheel drive. It's probably the first week we move up to Spokane, and we get the largest snow in Spokane's history. It was above our heads. That is how tall it was.
Oh, wow.
And
Goodness.
even when the snow melted a little, we tried to get out of our driveway, and we couldn't move. Long story short, the 4-wheel drive was not what the 4Runner was. It had no 4-wheel drive,
Oh, gosh.
so it was pointless. So we had to sell my car and get one that was 4-wheel drive. Because you would think a 4Runner was that. But it wasn't. It was 2-wheel drive. So that's another thing.
That's surprising.
Don't assume.
I would think, too, of all cars, that a 4Runner would be a good one to have in snow.
Sure. Just got to make it sure it's the 4-wheel one, not the 2.
Have you guys ever been to a snow game, like for football or anything?
Yeah.
Closest was Titans-Texans last year on Christmas Eve when it snowed. Well, it was really just ice from the day before.
That was cold.
Yeah, it was.
That was really cold.
My first ever Ravens game was a massive snow game. It was Vikings Ravens in 2013. It was snowing so bad that they could not see the end zone lines, and they called a Marlon Brown touchdown when he was very obviously out of bounds. It saved the whole day for me. So that's my only snow game experience.
And
though.
that's a great snow game experience because it worked out in your favor.
As long as it works out. I remember I was so worried about Adrian Peterson coming into that game, and then he got knocked out in like the first 3 minutes. But it was my first experience seeing Cordero Patterson. I remember he had like 3 catches for 124 yards and 2 touchdowns. He took 2 screens to the house. It was his rookie year in Minnesota. I was very upset about how well Cordero ran the ball that game.
Nice. 615-737-1045 in the F&M Bank chat this morning, where you can stream the show on Facebook Live, YouTube, Twitter, or Twitch.
Twitch, please.
There you go.
Rude Daddy writes in on Twitter, says, I was stuck in a car for 10 hours on the way home from school that day in 2002. Worst snow day ever. Yeah, it was. So I looked it up online. It was late January, I believe, 2002 is when it was. Let's see. Yeah, I believe that was it.
That's
Or
not
no, late February.
late February. Okay.
I believe so.
That's
I
a
don't know.
little bit later than we usually see snow here.
Yeah. Yeah, it was crazy. I remember that day very well.
Stuck in a car for that is hopefully the
That's not
gas
fun.
was all the way full when you started that journey.
I believe February 7th. There you go.
Okay.
Yep. And that was 6 inches that day, which I believe is the highest we've had. I don't know if we've had any more since then. I know in 2015, there was a week where we were in the single digits for like 3 straight days. And we had ice in 2015 where we were out for a week. And the school I went to, unless heaven and earth were moving in a negative direction, you were not getting out of school. Like you were still going to go in a private school where you don't have buses that have to run. And we were out for a week. I remember talking to my teammates at Tennessee about that because that was the week of the SEC Indoor Track Championships, and they ran inside on treadmills every single day leading up to the SEC Championship, which was not good for anyone involved.
I was going to say that probably is the worst thing that could happen time-wise.
Not good for anything. Can you guys do like a treadmill?
Yeah, actually, we're getting one. We're getting the Peloton one because Travis needs to. He needs an excuse to do it indoors and not out. So he doesn't, in this weather, he doesn't want to go out and do it.
I
So.
really want one of those. My mom
weather.
has one of the walking slabs, like when you're at work, you have like a standing desk. She has like a Nordic track.
Yeah.
Those are so slick, man, because it feels like you're on the things at the airport. They like move you. It doesn't even feel like you're walking. It just feels like if you stop that you might end up with your back against the wall.
I have a special hatred for treadmills.
Yeah, especially if you're a runner growing up. Like, I trained on both a treadmill and outdoors when I did my marathon, but I would rather do outdoors. But I'm not going to lie, guys, as a woman running outdoors nowadays, don't feel safe.
The Tennessean put out an article. This is from 2015, so it's actually very dated. I looked up largest snowfalls in Nashville, and according to this, the largest snowfall in Nashville since in the 2000s is 8 inches in 2016, January 22nd.
Okay.
It said 6.5 for 2003 in the snowstorm that you're talking about.
Yeah,
Will.
that's what I'm thinking about.
That's right before I moved here because I heard all about that snowstorm.
Yep, remember that one too.
Jeez.
615-737-1045. Go ahead.
No, sorry. At least, like we talked about, at least this one is a dry snow.
Yeah.
It's not
so
like
far.
having the opportunity to melt and then refreeze. Like it's very easy to drive on as long as you're careful.
Because the ice is what is not fun.
Right.
Correct.
Coming up next, we'll take a look at Super Wildcard Weekend and the headlines from a Dallas Cowboys game that was very much like a lot of other Dallas Cowboys games in January in the postseason. The Texans winning their first playoff game since 2019, setting up a fun doubleheader tonight as well, thanks to Mother Nature. Coming up this morning, Teresa Walker of the Associated Press will stop by at 8:20, giving her thoughts on the Titans search, where 4 candidates were interviewed over the weekend. We'll catch you up on that coming up next as well. And former NFL General Manager Randy Mueller will join us, 2000 NFL Executive of the Year. He will stop by at 9:20. And he's got an interesting perspective speaking about the Titans search, Mike Vrabel, and Nick Saban, considering he was the general manager of the Miami Dolphins with Nick Saban, who had personnel control of that team. Interesting stuff with Randy Mueller coming up this morning in hour 4 at 9:20. But when we come back, a recap of the weekend's games, the Texans impressing, the Cowboys hitting rock bottom. We'll give you details next.
Hey, it's Kayla Anderson. You can make the decision right now to get lasting relief from that awful joint pain for 2024. Don't go another year compromising because of that pain in your knees or your shoulders. Call QC Kinetics now. QC Kinetics is the nation leader in regenerative non-surgical pain relief. Your body has what it needs to restore and repair that damaged joint tissue, and QC Kinetics can make it happen with no drugs, no surgery, and best of all, no downtime. It is that time of the year, so decide to fight back against that pain. Take the first step now and go ahead and call QC Kinetics. Get a free consultation on the calendar today. Call QC Kinetics at 615-249-4024. That is 615-249-4024.
RKW is brewed by 8th and Roast on 104.5 The Zone. 615-737-1045 is our number. And if you are braving the elements this morning, or the elephants, if those are out, first of all, be careful. Secondly, this is our Real Voices live right now.
Yes.
We have
are
braved
live.
the elements, and so can you.
We made it.
Maybe I shouldn't encourage people to do that.
Well, and if they are, you just got to be slow today.
That's right. My brother does, like, part of his job is he works for a winter tire company. And he is the one that is always saying, like, these are the kind of tires you need. Like, these are the kinds of cars you need. Typically, it's not the driver or the car. Like, you literally, if you have good tires, you're fine.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know anything about these things. Adam Schefter this morning. Bit of news to start the day. Writing on Twitter just a few minutes ago, Michigan head coach Jim Harbaugh is meeting later today with the Los Angeles Chargers. In his first interview of this hiring cycle, per league sources, a decision is not expected to be imminent for either side. Harbaugh will deliberate with any decision he makes about his future. The Chargers still are going through an interview process and have other candidates that they plan to speak with. At this point, is L.A. the best fit for Harbaugh?
You know, I tend to think that it is. First of all, I'm sure he's going to love to go thaw out in California again, because clearly he was, with the 49ers, had spent a good amount of time there, did a really good job. And now you have an opening where, yes, there is work to be done there because they have underachieved. But if you have a quarterback that is ready to go, and I think he's underachieved a little bit too, but I think for a lot of other reasons. I feel like with Jim Harbaugh being the quarterback type of guy, type of coach, and he goes to LA where he can kind of fix things and have his quarterback already in place, I feel like that's something Harbaugh would embrace compared to some of these other jobs where they might even have a little bit more at their liking, but they don't have the quarterback situation in place. So I think that's the biggest thing for me, why he'd be a fit there, is because you don't have to go in and worry about going and finding your quarterback. You kind of have the guy.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think either Vegas or L.A. would be the best fit for Harbaugh just culturally as well. And it does look like over the weekend that Antonio Pierce is the heavy favorite to be retained in Vegas. And I think that makes sense considering what he was able to do with them this year. And we'll talk about Pierce as it pertains to the Titans coming up at 7:20 this morning as we go through each candidate. But to me, there's just something about the West Coast fit for Harbaugh that makes more sense.
Which is kind of strange, right? Because you've seen him up in Michigan. That's where he played college. Obviously, I think they're from the California area, the Harbaughs are. So going back there would be a natural fit for him. And he's not the most laid back guy, but I feel like that's maybe something that Chargers organization needs. They need a bolt. Like they need a recharge, no pun intended, to kind of get in the mix. They've been talked about a lot, but they've underachieved, like I mentioned. And they're kind of just lost with the other LA team continuing to have success, even when this year we thought they wouldn't amount to much. So I think it's a good fit for him in that way. And it is always interesting, too, if he gets back into the league, because, again, he has not announced yet that he's going anywhere. It will be so fun to just see him and his brother in the league. That's always a great storyline, no matter how you look at it. And as for Las Vegas, Antonio Pierce, I think, is an excellent fit there. Mm-hmm. I think his players want to rally for him. I heard Max Crosby was like, if you don't retain him, then I'm going to ask for a trade. So you can see how much they really believe in their head coach. And if I were Vegas, I'd be like, okay, we need to hire him.
Right. It is interesting. I totally agree that LA is the best fit for Jim Harbaugh, but they are going to have a wild cap situation to get out of this offseason. And when you look at Spot Track and the available cap space, the top 51 cap space for every team, the other LA team actually has the most cap space at this point of $90 million going into the offseason now. But you've got the Chargers sitting there $34 million over the cap.
Oof. Yeah, they got in that in a hurry, didn't they?
Yes, they did.
Because we were talking about the Rams and just how they went all in for that Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, they were going to be in a little bit of trouble. They don't seem to have worries. Like you said, they've got money to
Right.
spend this next year. I did not realize the Chargers were in cap hell.
Yep.
And it's 3 different players as well. I think
Yes, it
is.
the figure I saw that was like 40% of their cap is held up by like Justin Herbert, Mike Williams, and Keenan Allen.
Well, and you could throw Khalil Mack in there too right now. So you have Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, Keenan Allen, and Mike Williams making up, close to, 40%. You're right. 40% of the cap. It's 4 players.
That is crazy. Like, oh, I get the quarterback, right?
Mhm.
But then you look at the other players. They're all role players.
Right.
So
Interesting. 615-737-1045, our number. We'll start with the Saturday afternoon games where DeMeco Ryans and the Houston Texans won their first playoff game since 2019, 45-14 over the Cleveland Browns. I know we all were expecting Houston to at least cover 2.5 on the underdog side. I don't think anybody was expecting this, though, guys. And ultimately, Joe Flacco turned back into New York Jets Joe Flacco at the worst possible time for Cleveland.
he did. Clearly, that's a great story. And I think we've all had fun at least talking about, wacko for Flacco or whatever you want to call it. But at some point at that age, I don't know, I know he has playoff experience, but you've got a team you're going up against that is kind of defined a lot of odds this year in terms of nobody really counted them in. And then C.J. Stroud just changed that for everybody this year and really made his team a believer. And DeMeco Ryan said it after the game. He's like, C.J. Stroud is incredible. Like, he has done so many great things for us this year. He was the better quarterback by far on Saturday. 16 for 21, 274 yards passing, 3 touchdowns. And Flacco, 34 for 46, 307, 1 TD, but 2 interceptions. And that's the difference, right? They blew Cleveland out of the water. I did not expect a Jim Schwartz defense again to have a poor performance like this.
On the road, they were just a totally different team. And that did not include the win over Case Keenum without Will Anderson on the field for Houston, I believe on Christmas Eve, just a few weeks ago when Cleveland went to Houston and won by a couple of scores. But Jim Schwartz's Cleveland defense entered Saturday trying to be a better defense on the road, but they averaged 29.6 points per game allowed on the road this year. That was last in the NFL. And 331 total yards per game on the road in the regular season. Houston had 8.1 yards per play in this game.
And Houston also, they couldn't get to Stroud either. 0 sacks on Stroud. On the opposite end, they got to Flacco. He was sacked 4 times. You wonder, what is that difference with the Browns playing on the road?
Yeah, I don't know.
Why is the defense? It shouldn't be. If you're a great elite defense in this league, you've got to be able to play that way on the road and at home. Yeah, once in a while you're going to have an off game, but that is questionable with Jim Schwartz and that defense not being able to be as consistent on the road this year, and especially in this type of a game where you were the favorite.
It is crazy when you think about what Houston traded away, what they got back for Deshaun Watson, and now they literally just have a new Deshaun Watson.
Mm-hmm.
C.J. Stroud reminds me so much of what Watson was very early in his career, but even still, he's putting up better numbers than what Deshaun Watson was. The 4,000 yards, the touchdowns to very little interceptions. He is as big of a problem as the Titans have right now over the next 5 years.
We talked about the quarterbacks and just how fascinating it will be over the next few years to see those AFC quarterbacks compete against each other, who kind of prevails. And you're looking at Trevor Lawrence now as the oldest guy there, at least with the most experience right now in the AFC South. And he has somewhat taken a step back, and he's got a couple years on these guys. Will Levis is yet to be determined because I don't think we have enough from him yet to know exactly what he's going to be. That's why you're hoping and praying that they get the right coach in, because that's going to mean the world. I mean, if it's not the right coach and they're not continuing to develop him, they're going to be looking for a quarterback in the next couple of years. And then that's going to put the Titans back. Anthony Richardson, that I still have a lot to learn about him too. He's got to protect himself, else he's never going to stay healthy in the league. So CJ Stroud, to me, Will, you're right. I think he right now is lightning, not years ahead, but he just seems so much more comfortable in the role. He seems like he's mature and he's a leader on that team. And yeah, there might be a sophomore slump a little bit, but he seems to have everything going for him in terms of the leader in the AFC South right now in quarterbacks.
Another two big, not really talked about points from that game. The race for Coach of the Year is wrapped up because it was Kevin Stefanski and D'Amico Ryans. I think we can go ahead and crown D'Amico Coach of the Year. And the other one is by beating the Browns, the Texans gave themselves a better draft pick because of the Deshaun Watson trade.
Yeah,
so by allowing the Texans to move on, the Browns now have probably picked somewhere in the 20s, probably 20 to 21. And the Texans get the better of the two picks and move on in the playoffs.
Goodness sakes.
Jeez.
They've routed them in every possible outcome. They got the better quarterback. They have their first-round pick. They beat them in the playoffs. They won Coach of the Year because they beat them. I don't know how, if you're a Browns fan, you can look at that and go, well, that was a good year.
Honestly. The other thing of that, too, is that DeMar Hamlin might have just wrapped up Comeback Player of the Year over Joe Flacco.
That's right. Because it was kind of a head-to-head thing there because Flacco came on strong. I know, because a lot of people, you know.
It needs to be Joe Flacco.
The story's great with DeMar Hamlin, but he's not a big-time player.
He's
not
playing.
playing.
The one, moment he had was he was the 12th man on the field for a penalty that lost Buffalo a game to Denver on, Sunday Night Football or Monday Night Football.
And I think if we're all being honest with ourselves, if Lamar wasn't already the MVP, he should probably win Comeback Player of the Year, too.
Yeah.
But that's not me just saying that because I took a bet in the summer not thinking he would win MVP. No big deal.
It's fine.
I'm not bitter.
Chiefs 26, Dolphins 7. Chiefs defense looked great. The weather, were you guys more or less interested in this game because of the weather?
I'm not going to lie. I always love elements, and I know Andy Reid did not want to admit, or Patrick Mahomes did not want to admit that, weather had anything to do with it. But when you're seeing Andy Reid's mustache freeze, give me that all day, every day. Yes, I was watching a little bit more because of the weather.
I was more intently viewing that game, and just the Taylor Swift shots were funny. And
they were.
The frozen beers. There was that one video of the guy that took a water bottle out of a fridge, and the fridge was actually keeping the drinks warmer than outside, and took a water bottle out, and the water bottle immediately just freezes from top to bottom.
That was incredible.
Within about 5 seconds of holding it. It looked like one of those time-lapse videos.
Yeah.
Where something freezes over the course of an hour or two, and it was about 5 seconds.
It was wild. I thought that was fake for a second. I'd go back and be like, is this real? I thought it was also kind of impressive, and I liked the game plan with Andy Reid and company, what they went in there, not afraid to pass the ball, not afraid to do what they do. And it was a little watered down, obviously, because of the weather. But for the most part, they were going to go out there and they were going to be aggressive, and it worked.
Yeah, it did. Patrick Mahomes was good against the blitz, 10 of 21 for 123 when blitzed. Other than that, he was 13 of 20 for 139 and a touchdown. Rashee Rice, the first rookie in NFL history to have 8+ catches and 130+ receiving yards in a playoff game. Chiefs defensive front had 16 pressures against Tua Tagovailoa. They sacked him twice, made him hold the ball longer than what he is used to.
Mm-hmm.
How do we evaluate Tua at this point of his career?
It's hard because I know he did a lot this offseason to work on things that he needed to work on, and clearly he's done a little less in terms of putting himself in harm's way this year. And I think there are times he looked good, and this offense was clearly clicking on all cylinders. But this is always my question with this type of head coach like Mike McDaniels. how long lasting is this? Because their defense was pretty much not there, right? Like they did not look good. I know they were missing some key players, but you can have that offense all you want, but is it gonna maybe not be able to withstand throughout a season? I just feel like we're seeing some creaks and kinks in it. I don't know how long lasting that is.
Right.
And Tua has done a good job up to this point, but then you see him in situations like this. Like the man looked defeated.
Yeah, he did. And now he is winless in games that have a kickoff temperature of below 40 degrees in his career. He's 0-5 in games that are cold. I don't know. It's just they picked up his fifth-year option on March of last year, so he will make $23 million against the cap next season. So he has one more season for sure, and that is a fully guaranteed $23.1 million top 5 pick. So obviously that's a big number at the end of his rookie contract. And then he's a free agent in 2025 when he's 27. It feels like the Dolphins are stuck in the Dak Prescott, you have a good, not great quarterback purgatory. And the question they will have to ask themselves, and this might sound ridiculous, but I think we just watched it become a legitimate conversation, is Tua good enough in football weather January to march you through the playoffs if you have to go to Buffalo, if you have to go to New England, if you have to go to New York, to Philadelphia? Like, obviously, Philadelphia wouldn't because you're in the AFC, but just throwing out cold weather cities. Like, the cold weather cities in the AFC are what? Pittsburgh, Cleveland, New York Jets, but we don't have to worry about them making it deep in the playoffs either. And then Buffalo at that point. So, like, I genuinely think that the weather part of this has to be a conversation with Tua Tagovailoa.
Yeah.
He can't win in the cold.
Look, I mean, he's from warm weather. Obviously, he went to Alabama. It doesn't get too cold there. There's not much that you're doing outside that time of year. Yeah, it's a good point. And I know you can't put it all on Tua because, again, the defense wasn't good either. However, these are situations where if you're going to make it far in the playoffs, you're going to have to go through these cold weather cities more so than not. And guess what? It's their damn fault that they didn't have home field advantage. And that goes back to you guys kind of flushed it down the toilet. You could have taken advantage of the fact that you're maybe a warm weather quarterback, if that's how we want to put it. Well, guess what? You didn't do the job, and then you went on the road.
By losing to the Tennessee Titans, the Dolphins had to go to Kansas City to play that game.
Correct. That's ironic.
Would have been the 2 seed, and that would have been Buffalo and KC. I believe, right? I know that they would have been the 2 seed at that point.
Miami would have, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy. 615-737-1045 is our number. Streaming live at 1045 The Zone TV. Up next, we'll get to yesterday's games as well, where Detroit sends home their former quarterback and the Green Bay Packers continue a trend in Dallas that Cowboys fans are not going to like in one of the NFL's oldest and greatest rivalries. We'll get to yesterday's games coming up next. RKW is brewed by 8th and Roast on 104.5 The Zone. 615-737-1045 our number, and streaming live on 104.5 The Zone TV. It is as cold as ice.
Mm-hmm.
A balmy, pulls up the app, 12 degrees.
Woo-wee. Bundle up out there, folks.
12 degrees. We will get to the 4 candidates the Titans have interviewed and the 5 that are left coming up in 15 minutes. But the Dallas Cowboys, guys. Oh, they did Dallas Cowboys-like things, as our friend Ramon Foster would say yesterday. The Green Bay Packers, this is crazy, are now 6-0 all-time when playing at AT&T Stadium. Think about that. They are 3-0 against the Cowboys in the regular season, 2-0 now against the Cowboys in the postseason, and 1-0 in the Super Bowl. Kayla, when I picked the Packers to cover +7 last week, I thought it was going to be in a field goal win from the Cowboys, not a 31, or what was it? It was 31 at one point,
Right.
38 at one point. Ended up being a 16-point loss for Dallas, but this was not close to a 16-point game.
No, I mean, there was garbage points at the end, and really Green Bay had put in their backups. Now they had to bring back out Jordan Love because they thought, oh, it is getting a little too close for comfort. But no, it was a blowout, right? When you look at it, the Green Bay Packers pretty much dominated that game. You look at the thing that we always talk about, the quarterbacks. And Jordan Love is a guy that does not have any experience in the postseason. He sure looked like he was the guy that had experience in the postseason. I mean, 16-21, 272, 3 touchdowns. He was not touched last night. So the line doing a great job protecting. And then you go over and you look at Dak. And this is the thing, guys. Dak Prescott in these pressure situations, in playoff situations, I don't know what it is, and I'm not blaming it all on Dak. But this is a guy who struggles. I mean, he threw 2 interceptions. You can't do that in these types of scenarios. And you were so good at home this year. I think they were perfect at home, weren't they? Or dang near close to
they were.
it. 8-0 at home maybe this year?
Yes.
And then you go and not only lose, but you lose in that fashion to a team that has a quarterback with no experience in the postseason?
They had a 16-game home win streak. Like, it wasn't just this year. They had not lost there in 2 years.
I didn't realize it was 2 years.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was everything that Cowboys fans were afraid that game was going to be. I think the guy who hurts the most out of this is Dan Quinn. And his defense allowed 41 points. Of course, the other Green Bay touchdown was on the yearly Dak pick 6 of the playoffs, a Darnell Savage pick 6. Aaron Jones goes 21 carries for 118 and 3 touchdowns. Jordan Love was under pressure 4 times. 4 times in the whole game. There are edge rushers that have had 4 pressures against Titans left tackles in 1 quarter this season. 4 pressures all game against Jordan Love, but on those 4 passes that he attempted under pressure, 4 for 4, 114 yards, 1 touchdown.
Yeah.
Did Dan Quinn's head coaching candidacy take a big hit just based off of this game?
That's honestly the first thing I thought about, Will, because first of all, the looks on everyone's face in terms of that Dallas staff last night was just befuddled. I guess if that's the word I'm going to use. They kept on going up to Dan Quinn towards the end of the game and just showing the disbelief. And we all know what Jerry sounded and looked like after the game. He might have aged another 10 years, but Dan Quinn was one of the favorites off the top to go to the team that is my team growing up, the Seattle Seahawks. And the first thing that I thought with that is, wow, that's pretty soon for him to be coming out as the favorite, because that's what a lot of these insiders were saying. You got to really look at this game if you are one of those teams that's considering him as your next head coach. And you got to say, okay, can this be sustainable? And then when we get into the playoffs, is this a thing where he's just going to crap the bed in terms of his defensive game plan and let Matt LaFleur and company dominate? I mean, Matt LaFleur and what they did, it was like, I don't think anybody expected it. I think everybody was picking Dallas last night and on all the shows. I think we thought it would be a little closer. Will, you're right. You took them at plus 7.5, right?
Yep.
But I did not expect this, where they're putting in their backups in a playoff game in Dallas in this economy?
Right.
And if the Titans were looking to emulate anything from the Green Bay Packers, I think you could look at what they've done at their skill positions over the last 2 years, drafting and bringing in 6 players, 4 at wide receiver and 2 rookies at tight end this year, and just surrounding Jordan Love with a plethora of weapons. And another thing to look at, everyone that started the game for them on the offensive line last night are homegrown guys.
There you go.
None of those guys are brought in from free agency. 2 of them are second-round picks, but Rasheed Walker out of Penn State, 7th-round pick. Zach Tom out of Wake Forest, 4th-round pick. Guys that they've cultivated, and somebody goes down with injury, that's okay. We've got a guy we drafted in the late rounds, and we've been bringing him along. And it worked for Green Bay last night.
I love you brought that up because when Ramon Foster has talked to us about offensive line time and time again, the one thing he says is the best way to make sure you have the future offensive line in place is you got to homegrown. You got to do the homegrown thing. And that's, I think, what the Titans got to learn.
It is interesting and important, too, that in today's NFL, when you need to either have a top 10 quarterback or an elite offensive head coach who could make a top 20 quarterback look like a top 10 quarterback when all things are right around them, Matt LaFleur deserves a lot of credit for what he's been able to do in Green Bay. And people in his marriage with Aaron Rodgers sided with Rodgers in that, look, just get rid of the head coach and keep Rodgers and build around him, give him whatever he wants. That clearly is not what they should have done. And that organization made the right decision. And Jordan Love, deserves the investment that they've made in him. He looks like the next generational Green Bay Packers quarterback. And, he led the NFL in passer rating over the end of the season. Like, he genuinely has been really, really good. Since week 12, he's led the NFL in passer rating.
Was he perfect yesterday, too?
He was.
God.
He was.
Incredible.
Coming up, we'll take a look at Lions and Rams late last night. Such a fun game in front of 66,000 plus in Detroit. 32 years of wilderness wandering over for Detroit. We'll take a look at that. Plus, the logistics on when the Titans can now interview 4 of their 9 candidates starting this week. We'll remind you on the rules and regulations around that coming up next.
What's going on? 701, good morning from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I'm Robert Walsh. Packers stunned the Cowboys 48-32 in Dallas. Jordan Love threw 3 scores. Aaron Jones had another 3 on the ground. Green Bay now travels to number 1 seeded San Francisco. Dak Prescott threw his yearly playoff pick 6 to Darnell Savage, with Jerry Jones after the game saying he has not made a coaching decision just yet. In the nightcap, Detroit got their first playoff win since 91, defeating the Rams 24-23. Jared Goff scoring a touchdown against his former team, while David Montgomery and Jameer Gibbs, both scored touchdowns on the ground. The Lions will now host the winner of today's game between the Bucs and the Eagles. Speaking of today's games, 104.5 The Zone's regular programming will end at 3 as we carry the Bills and Steelers game. Kickoff is at 3:30, which will be followed by the Bucs and Eagles at 7:15. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and the Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Four interviews down and at least 5 to go for your Tennessee Titans. And as hour 2 begins, we break down each and every one of them who have spoken to the Tennessee Titans over a busy football weekend, super wild card weekend, a coaching search that continues, and over a snow-covered Nashville. We cover it all with you right here at RKW, brewed up by 8th and Rose. Tremone Foster with the morning off. We've got Kayla Anderson, Robert Walsh behind the glass. My name is Will Bowling. 615-737-1045. Who is your favorite candidate the Titans have spoken to so far? You've got 4 to choose from. The Titans have officially asked to interview 9 total candidates. That number could go up. But so far, Bengals OC Brian Callahan, Giants OC Mike Kafka, Raiders interim head coach Antonio Pierce, and Ravens defensive coordinator Mike McDonald. About every 6 hours, Kayla, over the weekend, the Titans sent out the notification. Talk to somebody else.
Yeah, I was trying to pay as close of attention to that as I could with all the other games going on this weekend. Because remember, last week, we barely even got to any of these game previews because there was so much going on with, head coaches leaving certain places that have been there for a long time. Pete Carroll, Bill Belichick, obviously the Mike Vrabel news, and then just all the news about who they are going to interview. And remember, these first interviews are virtual. So the 4 that they've done have been virtual interviews. So it's interesting to see, and I brought this up, Will, how much can you get a gauge on these first 4 interviews or just the virtual interviews in general to be like, okay, we're going to continue to move this candidate on, or we've seen enough, not our fit. I always wonder how much can you really gauge from that? Or do you just move all these on to an in-person interview?
Right. I think it's interesting. Coach Mack had the illuminating answer about that last week, how coaches who you are talking to at this point have already done their due diligence on who their staff would be, what their principles would be for an organization. Like, I got the sense talking from Coach Mack that you don't really personalize an interview for a team specifically, maybe until you get into the in-person interviews later in the process. Like, the feeling you got was you're going to give the same elevator pitch on what you would want to do as a head coach, meeting with someone virtually, and then maybe you bring the binder that's more specific about plans for that roster and plans for that building specifically, as it pertains to players on the team, the cap space you have, and things of that nature.
Yeah, so this is, you're waiting. So your choice was who was yours? Slowick.
My number 1 choice, Bobby Slowick.
Bobby Slowick.
Who is the odds-on favorite from a Vegas perspective to be the next head coach of the Titans at plus 100 at the moment.
And they are going to be able to interview him after today.
Starting tomorrow, yes.
Yep. Okay.
So that is the update on the rules and regulations around talking to coaches. So Tuesday is the first day virtual interviews can be conducted for head coaching candidates whose team played Saturday or yesterday. So for the Titans, that is 4 of their candidates. Bobby Slowick, the Texans offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson, the Lions OC, Aaron Glenn, the Lions DC. You've got Raheem Morris of the Rams in there as well, and then Dan Quinn, the defensive coordinators of the Cowboys, who is the other candidate the Titans have requested to interview. So those are the 4 coaches out of the 5 that are left. And then Brian Johnson, the Eagles offensive coordinator, the Titans can start interviewing him on Wednesday as his team plays tonight against Tampa.
Which I'm interested in how that's going to all play out.
Right.
Not my favorite candidate, but again, you've got to pretty much go out there and interview as much as you can. And that brings me back to the point where Amy Adams Strunk said in that interview with Mike Heath after Mike Vrabel was fired that day that we wanted to get a jump on it. Now I'm really thinking about that, guys, and the timeline, and they would have been behind because I think that trade, if there were to one to take place, would have taken at least a week. And that really does put you behind the 8 ball in getting the guys in that you really want. So I think it is smart. Now that you think about it, you would have loved to have maybe gotten something from Mike Vrabel. But I think finding the head coach that is the perfect fit for you and making sure you get a jump on it was the most important thing that they could have done.
So teams with open head coaching positions were able to begin requesting interviews with candidates from other teams on January the 8th. So those interviews have to be virtual before the end of divisional round games on January the 21st. So then starting January 22nd, so a week from today, teams can conduct in-person or virtual interviews with candidates employed by other NFL teams whose seasons ended. So that's the important caveat. So if the Houston Texans season ends this upcoming weekend, then the Titans could interview Bobby Slowick in person starting on January the 22nd. But teams cannot hold initial interviews with candidates employed by teams in AFC and NFC championship games until the end of the employer team's season. And second interviews are not allowed until January the 29th. So we are still at least 2 weeks away from this thing coming to a conclusion, unless the Titans want to hire someone who has already been let go. But even still, as I read the Rooney Rule, you still have to have 2 in-person interviews with minority candidates.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So you've got to at least wait for minority candidates' seasons to end as well. So we are at the beginning of what is still going to be about a 3 to 4 week coaching search.
And remember, the first kind of scouting that is going to happen in a big place is the Senior Bowl. There's other games obviously coming up, but that's kind of the big one. And our friend Jim Nagy does an excellent job down there in Mobile. I don't even know for a fact if I can say they're going to have the head coach by then. There's a good chance that they don't, and that it will be GM Rand Carthon and his kind of team that goes down there and does the scouting down there and you know, talks to these players that they're somewhat interested in. Because at this point, you're right, Will, if they really are serious about some of these other guys like Ben Johnson and Slowick in terms of if they continue to move on in the playoffs, that's going to put those guys a little bit behind. But they're that good in terms of a candidate.
615-737-1045 is our number. Yeah, teams must conduct in-person interview with at least 2 external candidates who are people of color and or women. So Lori Locust could count towards the Rooney Rule as well. Virtual interviews do not satisfy those requirements. So we got a little bit of time, friends. Settle in. Might be snowed in the entire time as well, perhaps, here in Nashville. But certainly settle in for that. Last night, Lions over Rams. This game was so fun to watch. I love it when a quarterback matchup lives up to the hype. And I know Jared Goff and the Lions did not look great offensively in the second half, but Goff was great, and Matthew Stafford in his return to Detroit was great. 25 of 36, 367 yards after hitting his throwing hand on a helmet as well. Guys, I think this one just came down to who had the ball last, partially, and Dan Campbell managed the clock better than Sean McVay did. I love the confidence that Dan Campbell just continues to show in Jared Goff, and Jared Goff keeps rising to the occasion.
And that's what I think this Detroit Lions team needed to take that next step. They needed that playoff win. I believe the first since 1991.
That's correct.
Which is incredible.
I was -6.
Yeah, I was like, Will, you were definitely
I was
not born.
not
Robert,
even close to being
were
born.
you born?
I was 3 years old. At
There
that
you
point.
go.
Buck wasn't born at that point.
Yeah, he was born.
He was?
He's younger than I am by a month.
Is he
Okay.
really? Okay. So he was about 3 too.
Okay.
That's incredible to me that it was that long. But then again, look at all these years that they've just not been a good team. And then even recently, not able to get that, next step in terms of a playoff win. Well, they got it. And they got it in a really incredible way where you had this storyline of Matt Stafford, former Detroit Lion, Jared Goff, former LA Ram. And when Jared Goff went to Detroit, let me tell you this much, guys. He's a Cali guy, born and raised. He was not happy to go to Detroit. And you could tell that first year he struggled. But props to him and the guys around him and Dan Campbell being able to really make him the quarterback they needed. And on the other hand, Matthew Stafford winning LA a Super Bowl. I don't know a better trade situation, flip-flop, that I've seen that where both teams have been able to have success out of it. This is what has happened with this, with both of these franchises. And then you look at just what Dan Campbell has done for this team. He talked about it yesterday. He just thanked the fans and said, there was something about the electricity in this place. I could feel it walking down the tunnel. Like it was just different. Like the fans have been good this year. This was just on a different level. They love him there.
They really do. And he has been just reborn, really, in a sense. Like they talked about that a lot last night on the NBC broadcast, which was not behind a paywall, that Jared Goff has just become a more confident quarterback again because of Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson. And that is why Ben Johnson is reportedly wanting a lot of money whenever he becomes a head coach somewhere looking like Washington, the most likely landing spot for him. But when we come back, we will look at the 4 candidates the Titans have already spoken to and the 5 that are left. Something on every coach, all 4 of them. The best candidate, is there a worst candidate out of the first 4 the Titans have spoken with? We'll get your phone calls as well at 615-737-1045 on RKW, brewed by 8th and Roast on 1045 The Zone. Hey, it's Will Bowling here for my friends at Lee Company. Is your water heater not heating? Well, look, over the last 24 to 48 hours, you might have had this realization that, might be time to make some fixes to that. Maybe your sink is leaking, the drain is clogged. Well, available 24/7, 365. Our expert friends at Lee Company, they have you covered for all of your plumbing needs. And right now, you can enjoy $20 off a plumbing service call for a limited time. All you got to do is contact Lee Company today at 615-567-1000 or go to leecompany.com for an appointment to take care of your home's plumbing from top to bottom. Whether it's your water heater, your sink leaking, the drain clogged, I love about Lee Company that they are available 24/7, 365. And you hear me say all the time that Lee Company is all you need. Well, they're open 24/7. They have nearly 80 years of experience, trusted here in this community since 1944, and with over 950 vehicles in their fleet, the vans, the trucks, everything that they've got, they are ready to help you at a moment's notice. So get this great offer from my friends at Lee Company. Take $20 off your next plumbing service call at leecompany.com. Go to leecompany.com/promotions to see all of their great offers or call them at 615-567-1000. That's Lee Company, all you need. 4 interviews down and 5 more to go for the Tennessee Titans at least. We've got something on every candidate this morning on RKW, brewed by 8th and Rose, 615-737-1045, live kicking off your snowy Monday morning in Nashville and beyond. You can stream the show live on 1045 The Zone TV or listen to any conversation you missed after the show. Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Play, at 1045thezone.com. Teresa Walker of the Associated Press joins us in an hour, and former NFL General Manager Randy Mueller is coming up at 9:20 this morning. We go to the phones, though. Kicking off the morning on the phones is Cousin P in Nashville. First up. What's up, Cousin P? Good morning.
Hi, guys. Good morning. Thanks for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
Had a quick topic I want to cover for coaching search, and I want to kind of get y'all's opinion about it. Obviously, y'all get ready to cover that segment. I was wondering, though, I've heard rumors about Mike McCarthy possibly being out in Dallas. So I didn't know how attractive that job would become as it pertains to coaches we're trying to hire. And then the next thing I would like to say, as a public service announcement, Will, I kind of heard you say earlier that, if you can get out, get in. I'm going to have to go ahead and say absolutely don't do it.
Yeah, no,
if
don't
you
do
can
that.
stay in, please stay home. The roads are horrible. And it makes, our job a little harder when we have to, deal with people who are out when they don't have to be. So if you can stay home, please stay home. Go sledding with the kiddos. Have a good day. Go throw snowballs at each other, whatever. But stay off the roads, guys. So, hey, I love you guys. Y'all be safe, and I'll hang up and listen.
Yeah, thank you, Cousin P.
You
That
too.
was
Be safe out there.
Complete sarcasm earlier. Do not get out today.
Yes.
We braved the elements. Does not mean that you should. The question on the Cowboys is interesting, and we spoke about this Friday about if the Eagles or Cowboys could possibly have openings if they disappointed in the postseason. Right now, according to Bet Online, the odds for the next Cowboys coach are overwhelmingly in favor of Bill Belichick. Now, that is with the caveat of if not Mike McCarthy. So this is not including Mike McCarthy. So this would be next Cowboys coach, the field. And Mike McCarthy, I would imagine, would still likely be a favorite. But Bill Belichick is an overwhelming favorite to be the next Cowboys coach if there is a change at minus 175.
I find this interesting. And look, we'll have to see what happens with McCarthy because Jerry Jones was asked about it, of course, because he speaks after every game. And he clearly was shaken up and did not even know probably what happened last night in Dallas because it was just a blur to him. But he didn't say anything in terms of what might be next. And that will be probably being discussed in the next couple of days. But if he were to be fired and you jump on Bill Belichick. Look, I get the Bill Belichick, he is one of the greatest of all times, right? He did a lot in New England with Tom Brady. In the past couple of seasons, in my opinion, he has not been the Bill Belichick of the early years. And he's 71 years old. So I get if you're maybe a team that is just not really needing to completely build your future. And maybe that is really what Dallas would be okay with. We don't need to revamp everything. And we've got, even though he hasn't been great in the playoffs, we've got what it looks to be, they're going to stick with Dak Prescott. So maybe that's okay with them. But to me, if you are one of these teams, don't you want to continue to build for the future and make sure you've got a team for the next several years that's going to be a Super Bowl competitor in contention? I just feel like with Belichick at any moment, he could say, I'm done. Even after a couple seasons, I'm tired. To me, he is not a favorite in any of these places if I'm a team.
Buck Reising at AtoZSports.com wrote last night that as of yesterday morning, Mike Vrabel has not had interviews with any of the 6 teams with job openings. Again, he wrote like he did on Friday, multiple sources close to Vrabel have said not to rule out the idea of the coach taking some time off as opposed to jumping right into his next job. Buck then goes on to write, Vrabel is a name to watch if things go south in Dallas. The only person with a better resume than the fired Titans coach is Belichick, Buck writes. Goes on to say Vrabel also has a good relationship with Cowboys executive president, CEO, and director of player personnel Stephen Jones as 2 of 8 sitting members on the NFL's competition committee.
And you know what? It makes more sense to me. It's a younger coach who is cut from the Bill Belichick, I can't speak this morning, Bill Belichick tree, the New England kind of way. And I think Vrabel's a little bit different from that, right? He does things a little bit differently than Bill Belichick. I almost think like his personality would fit down there. Now, what his relationship would be like with Jerry Jones, he's going to have to accept the fact that Jerry Jones is going to be in his business.
Right.
And that's one thing here. I don't think Amy Adams Strunk really pushed herself on much, but when it came time to it, she did. And that clearly didn't go right. They parted ways. So that's the thing there, Will. I think he'd be a really good fit. I think he could handle the Cowboys media and everything that comes along with the hoopla. But can you handle Jerry Jones always in your business?
And that's the interesting thing with Belichick is that Bill Belichick and Jerry Jones have a good relationship. And Peter King wrote in NBCSports.com in the Football Morning in America column this morning, says, I can't believe Jerry Jones with a star, parentheses, fading though he is, like Bill Belichick on the free market, wouldn't go hard after him to try to salvage this era of Cowboys history. But the other byproduct of this game is that Dan Quinn's stock fell precipitously with the dive-bombing performance of his defense. 6 touchdowns allowed within the first 7 Green Bay possessions. To me, Bill Belichick would want more control versus what Jerry Jones would be willing to give him. But I think the caveat to that is Jerry Jones ain't getting any younger. And at this point of his life and his career, is Jerry Jones more apt to name a head coach who he feels like can step right in and win immediately with the players in that building and on that roster, while Jerry Jones is still of the mental state to do that job the way he intends to do it. And I don't see Jerry Jones ever stepping back until health-wise he has to. But the guy is not getting any younger. And I think at 81 years old, I think he makes a change. I think he should.
Yeah. And that's why I would go, Will, with the younger candidate in a Mike Vrabel, if that he has interest in coaching this next season, rather than a Bill Belichick who is more so on the outs at some point, right,
yeah,
with his career. I think you go with the younger version of a Bill Belichick. And I know Mike Vrabel doesn't have a Super Bowl. I understand that. But I do feel like if Jerry Jones wants to give some of that power, you might as well give it to the guy who is just kind of in the prime of his coaching years, rather than a guy that is seen the best and that's behind him, from what I think.
Sure. Okay, well, the Titans have already interviewed 4 candidates. They've got 5 left to talk to of the 9 that they have officially put out requests for. So let's look at one thing on each candidate that they've already talked to. And let's start with your number 1 pick. We had this exercise last week and picked in the very early stages of the search the guys who would be at the top of our lists. You had Bengals offensive coordinator Brian Callahan at the top of the list. That's where the Titans started in their search. What is the thing you like about him the most?
Yeah, so when I came on here the other day, I had reached out to somebody close to the situation in the league and wanted firsthand knowledge of who this guy was. Because, you know, we see from the outside what he's done there, or maybe what he's not done. And the first thing that I really got out of this conversation was this guy is ready to be a leader of men. He's ready to be a head coach because he's stayed there in Cincinnati when maybe he could have gone a little bit early in his career. He decided to stick with Zach Taylor and learn how things go in terms of being a head coach. I think the one thing that you hold back a little is that he does not call the plays. And I think that worries some people, and I understand that wholly and completely. But from what I got from this guy, this source, was that he is so heavily involved in the game plan. And because he's been there for 5 years with Zach Taylor, he's clearly understanding everything that's going on. To add to that, Will, his background is coaching. He grew up with Bill Callahan as his dad, who has been a head coach, but more successfully been an offensive line coach. When you're born into that, like there's something that just like allows you to understand the game better than others. And that's why I have so much confidence in him. And then all the people, all the players that say he's just a great guy. He knows when to be a leader, but he knows when to step back. Even Peyton Manning on Brian Callahan in 2016, where they were together in Denver. Peyton Manning says he's been huge for me this year. He's going to be a top offensive coordinator, maybe a head coach like his dad, Bill, at some point in the near future. That was back in 2016.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like him a lot. I think the thing that stuck out to me in researching about him, it was more the draft philosophy of Cincinnati. It's something he was quoted on by a reporter getting ready for the AFC Championship game last season in 2022 and 2023. And Bengals coach Zach Taylor is heavily involved with the team's draft in scouting. And I think if you go Brian Callahan, you're getting a guy that's going to be perhaps more involved in that process, or at least as involved as a head coach can be within the draft and scouting process. But Cincinnati has made it a priority to draft championship-level FBS players. And you think about Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, some of those guys who have specifically played in the college football playoff. Zach Taylor was quoted on that last year saying, we feel like we have rookies that are less likely to hit a rookie wall because they have played an extra, sometimes 3 games, being in a conference championship and a college football playoff. And it's interesting seeing a coach go on the record saying that that's an important part of their process. You got Ohio State alums Sam Hubbard, Von Bell, Eli Apple, who fit into that as well in the AFC Championship run last year. But Brian Callahan was quoted on this as well, saying, as much as you can, you want guys that have played in big games, had big moments, particularly guys that played well in big games. So when you get to these spots in your season, and when things get hard, they know what it's like to have been in that spot, and it's experience they can draw back on. If you've never been in that type of experience, I think it's hard to understand what that is like. I think C.J. Stroud certainly backed up that that's important on Saturday for Houston.
120%.
Considering his college football playoff experience. Interesting that if the Titans do go the Brian Callahan route, I think that is an area where this organization would maybe prioritize having more SEC, Big Ten, high Power 5 level talent on this roster. Another guy who is an offensive coordinator for an offensive mind, but is a play caller, is Mike Kafka. And Mike Kafka, to me, when you look at an offense that was 30th in the league in scoring at 14.9 points per game, a 36-year-old Mike Kafka, who is a journeyman quarterback in this league, is not someone who immediately pops off the page. But the Andy Reid tie is interesting because Mike Kafka was first an offensive quality control coach in 2017 before advancing to quarterbacks coach in 2018 and adding passing game coordinator to his title in 2020. In 2022, Mike Kafka maybe should have struck while the iron was hot in terms of head coaching opportunities. He interviewed with Indianapolis. He left Kansas City for New York in 2022. And in 2022, the Giants had the NFL's number 4 rushing attack and number 7 red zone offense as Daniel Jones set career highs in nearly every significant passing stat. You did have, though, that Giants loss to the Rams, 26-25 this year, right at the last minute, where Mike Kafka, the offensive play caller, called a Saquon Barkley draw run for a 2-yard loss when they needed a pass to get the offense at a field goal range, spelling the end of a 26-25 loss to the Rams. There were concerns with Mike Kafka's play calling ability this year in New York.
And that's what's hard for me to be like, okay, I want to go that direction. When there's so many other candidates that at least right now have had success. And I know it's more about long-term success. And Mike Kafka is a former player. And we have seen with the Tennessee Titans in the past that they have gone with guys that are players coaches, right? Or they've played the game recently. I didn't even know this, y'all, but Kafka was with the Titans in 2015 for a short time. My goodness. I mean, he's
been everywhere.
He's been everywhere. Philadelphia, New England, Jacksonville, Cincinnati Bengals was his last stop. And I get like the Andy Reid stuff, and he was with Kansas City for a good chunk of time. And you do, if you're a good coach and if you want to evolve in the game, you do learn stuff when you're in an organization where you've got a guy like Andy Reid who's such an offensive mind and has had so much success. But the inconsistencies this year, Will, as offensive coordinator for the Giants, I just can't be sold on that right now with a organization that really needs to make the right decision.
I agree.
On Kafka, too, if you look at the other job interviews he got last year, he was a pretty handy name on the list where he interviewed for the Cardinals job, interviewed for the Colts job, as you mentioned, interviewed for the Texans job, was also talked to about the Carolinas job. So I wonder, are the Titans the only people that have requested an interview with him so far for a head coaching job this year?
I believe so, but I would have to double check on that.
I haven't heard his name much, so and you wonder too, what is there a connection there, right? Like maybe because he spent a little time here, it was very short, I think like a year.
Yeah, so far it is just the Titans. I don't think being on a practice squad for a couple months in 2015 would make a difference.
You just wonder, like, what's his connection if he's not really wanted anywhere else?
Probably just being able to squeeze coal and get a diamond out of it. When you look at the Giants last year, getting more out of less. But
that's fair.
I was looking at this with his interview with the Texans. The names that interviewed for the Texans job last year: D'Amico Ryan, Shane Steichen, Ben Johnson, Jonathan Gannon, and Ejiro Evero. All guys that are either head coaches now or being discussed about being head coaches this year.
So that's two candidates. We'll take a look at two more coming up next, who the Titans have already spoken to officially over the weekend. Wrapping up this on Kafka, though. Is his regression from year 1 to 2 enough of a cautionary tale to proceed with caution on someone like Bobby Slowick?
It's
because
fair.
Mike Kafka was Bobby Slowick this time last year, just without the Kyle Shanahan tie. Instead, he had an Andy Reid tie.
And also, Slowick has an incredible quarterback as a rookie, right? You're not usually gifted with that.
That is something that I think is a fair criticism of Bobby Slowick, the Texans offensive coordinator, is just the 1 year of experience. The sample size is so small.
Mm-hmm.
You are taking a legitimate risk, and you could always have someone who perhaps hit a flash of the pan for one season who regresses. I mean, Kafka was one of the guys who this time last year we're saying, oh, he's definitely going to be a head coach this time next year. Not the case for Kafka. We'll take a look at Antonio Pierce, Mike McDonald, the other two coaches who the Titans spoke to over the weekend. Your phone calls as well at 615-737-1045 as we talk Titans and head coaching searches. Next. Live and rolling right along on a Monday morning edition of RKW. We are brewed up by 8th and Roast with locations on 8th Avenue, Charlotte, the airport, and the Broadview at Vanderbilt. 8th and Roast Coffee cultivates community by the cup. Got the French New Wave brew going this morning. It is warming up our spirits.
Yes.
On a very cold morning outside. If you do not have to be out today, please don't. Please stay home. I promise you. It's not worth it. 615-737-1045 our number. Coming up in 15 minutes, there is a stat about a Titans head coaching candidate that Titans fans are going to love from over the weekend. From Peter King's Football Morning in America column earlier today. We'll give you that coming up in just about 15 minutes. Two more coaches the Titans interviewed over the weekend. We've got something on each of them. Raiders interim head coach Antonio Pierce, the third coach the Titans talked to. Crazy that this guy started, Kayla, his coaching career as a high school head coach at Long Beach Poly in California.
Yeah.
Before joining Arizona State as linebackers coach / recruiting coordinator in 2018. Raiders went 5-4 with him as the interim after they fired Josh McDaniels during the season. I think this is the guy we could probably spend the least amount of time on, considering he is the overwhelming favorite just to get the Vegas job.
And I really think they should consider him. I know a lot of these times these interim tags don't end up turning into a head coach tag. But in this case, I think it's a little bit different. Look, this is a guy you mentioned. He most recently played in the NFL in 2009. But he's that type of player that went undrafted. He was a little bit of an undersized linebacker coming out of Arizona. Clearly was able to spend a little bit of time in the league. I just think is really a guy who knows how to rally his players. He's not long removed from the NFL. And when you are able to have success, I think, in a really crappy situation this year with Las Vegas, and you have the guys like Max Crosby, who I respect the heck out of. He's a heck of a player who's coming out and saying, like, I'm going to explore trade options if this guy is not retained. I think that means something. I don't think your players just come out and say that kind of stuff if they don't believe in you as a head coach. And you got to make sure you got the right staff around you, and those will be things that he'll have to look at in terms of being able to sustain success there. But I think he's there. I think he's going to be the next head coach of the Raiders.
For me, there are two reasons why you interview somebody like Antonio Pierce. Dan Campbell.
Yes.
All you need. I think teams are looking for that kind of coach wherever they can find it, even if it's not an offensive mind. It feels like NFL teams are making two kinds of hires now. Young offensive gurus who didn't play and have some tie to Kyle Shanahan or Sean McVay, who are in their mid-30s, or former head coach, rough around the edges, lunch pail, players coach, defensive guy or lineman. And that's kind of what the Titans had in Mike Vrabel. You're not as likely to do that again after firing Mike Vrabel.
You're right. And that's why it's surprising, too, that Mike Vrabel, we haven't heard his name in terms of interviews around the league. The more and more you kind of don't hear about him, the more you think, is he really going to maybe take a year off?
Right.
But there's so many prime jobs right now, and he is what a lot of teams are looking for. You're correct, Will. In that type of Dan Campbell personality, you would think he's got to strike while the iron's hot. But I do agree. I don't think that's the direction the Titans will go in.
And then there's Mike McDonald, the Ravens defensive coordinator who talked with the Titans over the weekend. He doesn't really fit in either. He's not really the rough around the edges defensive, could beat you up in an alley coach. I mean, he could probably beat me up in an alley. I'm not really disputing that. But second-year play caller of a Ravens defense who finished the regular season leading the league in points allowed per game, sacks, and takeaways. They are the first team in NFL history to lead all of those categories in one season. And we have our resident Baltimore Ravens expert, Robert Walsh, behind the glass, of course, this morning. It came from Michigan, where they would make the college football playoff in his only season there, when Michigan won their first Big Ten title since 2004 and 2021. But this is a guy who spent a lot of time in Baltimore and would intimately be familiar with how the Ravens have built what they have built, and Ravens DNA, which is not that far off from what the Titans have been in 25 years of football.
I think the biggest question to ask is, could Titans fans deal with another Coach Mack?
What do you mean?
Because his name is spelled, it's not McDonald, it's
Coach
Coach
Mack.
MacDonald.
MacDonald.
I
It is
got
Coach
you there.
MacDonald, MacDonald.
Or who would claim it, right? Coach Mack or Coach Mack?
You would have to call him Coach MacDonald. I don't
It's
think
a fight to the death for who is Coach Mack.
I would. I'd bet on the side of Coach Mack.
I
We'll
would
sell you
too.
the whole seat, but you'll only need the edge. Monday.
It could be Mac Talk, though. That could be a weekly segment that
There
might
you
be
go.
fun.
There you go. There you go. I think he is a super young dude. He'll be 37 by the time the year starts next year. You mentioned he'd been with the Ravens for a while. He'd been in Baltimore since 2014. Only 1 year with Michigan. Still a top 10 defense with Michigan.
In 2021.
Just really connects with the younger players. Really connects and has a multiple defense that isn't the stereotypical 3-4 or 4-3. It kind of leans to both ways. Whatever the situation dictates is what he's going to call.
I think for McDonald and for Pierce, I think Amy Adams Strunk wants to know the same thing on both of them. How did your organization achieve success with Antonio Pierce the short term and with Mike McDonald and the Ravens the long term? Because the guy's only 36, but he has spent quite a long time with Baltimore. It's essentially his only job in the NFL. He started there as a defensive assistant in 2015, defensive backs coach in 2017, linebackers coach 2018 to 2020 when he's in his early 30s at that point, and then returned to the Ravens in 2022 as defensive coordinator, where he's now in his second season as the defensive play caller. I think it's understandable to know why. Okay, Amy Adams Strunk wants to know, Antonio Pierce, what did you do this season to change the culture in a very short amount of time? I think for Mike McDonald, it's how are you evaluating players in the defensive side of the football as a staff better than everyone else
Right.
to achieve the success you have there under exceptional leadership in that front office since 2015?
And that's why you have to give him a look, right?
Right.
Because when you are in an organization as consistent as the Baltimore Ravens, whether you like it or not, fans, you have to assume that a guy like this is going to soak up as much as possible. And the only reason why I would say you don't want to go with him is you don't know offensively who his hire will be, but you have to trust that he can make the right hires, that this offense, which has struggled, can be taken to the next level with Will Levis.
Coming up next, the Vegas odds on where the Titans go for their next head coach and odds for all of the openings, all 7 of them in the NFL, plus a stat from a Titans head coaching candidate over the weekend who was coaching courtesy of Next Gen Stats. That is something Titans fans will love. Coming up next, a halftime of the show on RKW.
What's going on, Nashville? 8:01. Good morning from the 104.5 The Zone studios, covered in snow. I'm Robert Walsh. Packers stunned the Cowboys last night, 48-32 in Dallas. Jordan Love threw for 3 scores. Aaron Jones had another 3 on the ground. Green Bay now travels to the number 1 seed San Francisco to see who moves on in the NFC side of the playoffs. Dak Prescott threw his yearly playoff pick 6 to Darnell Savage. Jerry Jones, after the game, said that he hadn't made a coaching decision yet, but it was coming up. In the nightcap, Detroit got their first win, their first playoff win since '91, winning against the Rams 24-23. Jared Goff scored a touchdown against his former team, while David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibb both scored on the ground. The Lions will host the winner of today's game between the Bucs and the Eagles. Speaking of that game, well, really the night game, today, 104.5 The Zone's regular programming will end at 3 as we carry the Bills and Steelers game. Kickoff is at 3:30, followed by the Bills and Eagles at 7:15. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and the Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Second half of the show starts right now on a snowy Monday morning in beautiful Music City, USA. For the heart of downtown, welcome into RKW, brewed up by 8th and Roast. As the Titans complete 4 head coaching interviews over the weekend, we talk with Teresa Walker of the Associated Press about that coming up in 15 minutes. Plus, Randy Mueller, former NFL general manager, joins us at 9:20. Looking forward to a great discussion with a former NFL GM who did not have final say on roster decisions when he worked with a guy who was in the news a little bit last week by the name of Nick Saban for 2 years together as the general manager of the Miami Dolphins. Randy stops by at 9:20. 615-737-1045, streaming live at 1045 The Zone TV, Facebook Live, YouTube, Twitter, or Twitch.
Twitch, please.
With Kayla Anderson, I'm Will Bowling. There's Robert Walsh. No, Ramon did not get stuck this morning. This was a scheduled day off.
Yes. He just picked
Ramon
the
Foster.
right day off, right?
He did. Thank you so much.
Hopefully he's enjoying maybe listening from home.
Who's to say?
Yeah.
I'd be asleep.
Yeah, that's a good point. If you have the chance to sleep in.
8:04 a.m. Good morning, Ramon Foster.
Yes.
If you're just waking up, I did see one person ask that earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, Ramon is not on the side of a road somewhere. He is probably in bed.
Since he's
safe.
not here, I kind of want to brag on his picks a little bit. I'm kind of worried that if he hits this Steelers money line, he might be creeping up on the rest of us winners, man. He went 2-0 this weekend, I believe.
Yeah, he's at 2-0 right now. And then if the Steelers, like you said, he put the money line.
I think we are all having very good weekends.
Yeah,
I'm 2-0 too.
Correct.
I missed one, I think, because I took the Lions.
Oh, you took Lions. That's
right. I
right.
took them at plus.
But don't you have 2 bets today?
I won the one, and then I have Tampa tonight.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you won Houston plus 2.5. I bet that one. Like, actually, I didn't put it in my Thursday 3, but I did bet that one too. Like with U.S. dollars.
Now, your sneaky bet was the under for the Thursday.
And
the under in the
yeah.
Chiefs-Dolphins game.
Yep.
That was good.
Everyone was so focused on the Bills under.
Yeah.
Chiefs under was just as easy.
I'll tell you another bad bet was the over in the Lions-Rams game where they scored like 30-something points in the first half and then scored 9 in the second half. I think that over-under was set at 51.5.
That's right.
They finished with 47, 48 points.
Mm-hmm.
That's tough.
So this morning in Peter King's Football Morning in America column, NBCSports.com, he's got a great stat on a Titans head coaching candidate who, according to BetOnline, is the favorite to be the next head coach of the Tennessee Titans. When you look there at next Titans coach odds, Bobby Slowick at plus 100 is the favorite. So if you bet $100, you would make $100. Antonio Pierce is second at plus 400. Bill Belichick third, plus 600. Dan Quinn plus 800. And Ben Johnson, who reports last week say is most likely headed to Washington, under new general manager Adam Peters, the number 2 in San Francisco, who was hired on Friday morning. It rounds out that top 5. This was interesting. According to NFL Next Gen stats, Bobby Slowick did not just benefit from good quarterback play on Saturday. His receivers were open. And this is music to my ears and probably yours as well. Per Next Gen stats, 8 of C.J. Stroud's 21 passes were targeted to receivers who had at least 5 yards of separation from the nearest defender. Think about that. 5 yards of separation from the nearest defender. That is like college open. Mm-hmm. That's high school open. So this was not just Bobby Slowick benefiting from great quarterback play. He did get great quarterback play, obviously, on Saturday. He was getting Nico Collins and John Mechie and Robert Woods and Dalton Schultz very open, and Brevin Jordan for his quarterback, C.J. Stroud.
Got them all involved. That's what you want to see in terms of taking advantage of a quarterback like C.J. Stroud, also taking advantage of some of the weapons you have. And Nico Collins coming back for the Texans has been huge, right? Just getting him back and healthy. But that's also something you look at, Will, and that was against the Cleveland Browns defense, again, that just for some reason could not handle the game plan that was thrown at them. But you look at that and some of those little things, like you benefit from quarterback play, obviously, as Slowick, but you also look at him and say, hey, could he then bring an offense here that you have some wide receivers that are sitting in this wide receiver room that haven't been able to take the next jump? And being able to find a way for Will Levis to continue to work with some of these guys like a Treylon Burks, who I think a lot of people have kind of said we're done because, look, I get it. He has not been able to stay on the field. But if he is able to do that, Will, can he take a significant jump forward with a new type of offensive-minded coach like a Slowick?
It's a good question. Certainly is. And are you either retaining Charles London as quarterback's coach, or is there a scenario where Liam Cohen, Will Levis's former offensive coordinator at Kentucky, could come back to the NFL and get a gig? I think that is what the Titans have to do at this point. Greg Cosell said it on 3HL, and I agree that everything the Titans are doing this offseason needs to be centered around Will Levis, making him your franchise quarterback. Liam Cohen, the 38-year-old Kentucky OC, was interviewed by the Chicago Bears a couple of days ago for their offensive coordinator opening. I think bringing Liam Cohen to Nashville or retaining Charles London would be a good decision by whoever the next head coach is.
You have to have familiarity. If you are going and getting a brand new head coach with a guy that is entering his second season, has got a good amount of reps as a starting quarterback, but still needs to see a lot of progress in certain situations, I think you have to have something that's familiar to Will Levis. And I agree. I think Charles London has done a good job working with Levis this last season, but if he's not able to be retained, I think you have to go out and get somebody who can continue to develop him, who Will Levis feels comfortable with. That is your main thing this year, besides the offensive line, going into next year, I should say, is continuing to develop Will Levis. Because if that doesn't work out, you're back to square one.
Right. Let's go back to the phones. Richard is in Winchester up next, 615-737-1045. Hey, Richard.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay. I'm going to try to be as quick as I can. I think the Baltimore D.C. defensive coordinator, I think that would be a great hire for the Titans. I just do. And also, look, this might sound a little bit choppy. The Antonio Pierce thing, come on, man, that's a Rooney Rule checkoff. I mean, we know what that is.
Well, at this point, though, Richard, that does not count towards the Rooney Rule because he was not interviewed in person. So virtual interviews like that do not count yet.
Okay. Well, anyway, if you and Costa and Callahan, you might as well interview Eric Bieniemy. He has those same qualifications. And another thing, Vrabel going to the Cowboys, you might as well. Jerry Jones might as well pick Dan Quinn, who's already on the staff.
Yeah.
I think you will run Dan Quinn off if you pick Vrabel. But the main reason I called was what y'all were just recently talking about. How important is a quarterback coach? Because I don't hear a lot around the league about the quarterback coach as far as the growth of the quarterback. The coordinator is for the whole offense and the play caller on game day. But let's keep in mind, Andy Reid was never a coordinator. Philly hired him as a quarterback coach from Green Bay.
Right.
Hogan was calling those plays and the coordinator. So how much love can we give the quarterback coach as far as the growth of the quarterback, especially Levis? I think London might need to stay on.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. Appreciate the call. I think it's crucial.
I do too.
Considering Will Levis has a chance to be going into his fourth different offense in the last 4 years. Liam Cohen or Charles London for me.
Yeah. And here, the thing is it's rare that if you get an offensive coordinator, unless they specialize in quarterbacks, right, in developing quarterbacks, yeah, you're not going to see that one-on-one attention that you need for a lot of these guys that are young. And that is why Charles London will reiterate this, has been so great for Will Levis. Like, he was brought on here to obviously help Tannehill when he got here, but Tannehill's a veteran. Like, he doesn't need that type of growth guidance and all of that. He has helped Will Levis, and even Malik Willis, I think, has helped him kind of develop even more, even though we haven't seen Malik Willis or might not see him moving forward.
And I think the other part of that, too, is that if you bring in an offensive coordinator who is good enough for your offense to be top half of the league again, even if it is under Bobby Slowick or say it is under Mike McDonald, the Ravens defensive coordinator, that OC is going to get hired somewhere else within 2 years. Like, the package deal of Mike Vrabel and Matt LaFleur was such a good idea at the time, but as much as we praised that, how long did it last? 1 season for 2018. I think if you have two guys in that offensive staff who are helpful to Will Levis, one of them either being Liam Cohen or Charles London, and you have Bobby Slowick's offensive coordinator, whoever that is, who could come in, or Mike McDonald's offensive coordinator, you have a contingency plan then for if your OC does well enough and gets a job elsewhere in 2025, okay, well then let's just promote from within Charles London or Liam Cohen, and then that guy who is the quarterback's coach becomes the offensive coordinator in 2025. I think the Titans, regardless of whether or not they hire an offensive coach or a defensive coach, have to be thinking that far in advance of you need two legitimate offensive coordinator candidates on your offensive staff in 2024, because Will Levis cannot go 5 years with 5 different systems. It just cannot happen. And in that case, it would be his first 3 years in the NFL with 3 different systems. We'll talk about that with Teresa Walker of the Associated Press coming up next. Who is her favorite to be the Titans head coach as of this snow-covered January 15th morning? And is Mike Vrabel a fit in Dallas? Contractually, the Titans hope so, because they wouldn't have to pay out as much of his contract. We'll give you details on that with Teresa Walker of the AP coming up next.
Hey, I'm joined by our good friend and certified arborist, Dean Glasscock of Save a Tree. Dean, wow, we are seeing it here. The snow has fallen. What can you tell us about these weak limbs now that we're going to see? They're going to break heavy in the snow. How can you help?
Well, that's right. You just pick up the phone, call 615-299-9999. We've been around for 29 years, almost 30 years now. Super proud of that. Again, it's Save a Tree now, so it's SAVATREE.com as well. So, yeah, we've been around a long time, certified arborists. We have been talking about how we can come out for free, take a look around at your mature trees, make sure that there's no weak connections or any decay or mushrooms around the base, things like that, that this added weight of snow could offer failure. So, again, just pick up the phone, give us a call. 615-299-9999. In the meantime, if you've got a hillside and a sled, I highly recommend getting out there and enjoying it. So you all be safe today. Have a great rest of the week.
Hey, you too, Dean. Be safe out there, like Dean said, and call the experts. 299-99, 615-299-99, or just go to saveatree.com. That's saveatree.com.
On a snowy Monday morning in Nashville, the third hour of the show rolls on at RKW, brewed by 8th and Roast. Will Bowling, Kayla Anderson with you. Robert Walsh, our producer. Ramon Foster with the morning off. As we go to the phones, and we are joined by one of our favorites. She is Teresa Walker of the Associated Press. Good morning, Teresa. Hope you're staying warm.
I am. Or as some in the Titans media corps are calling me right now, patient zero. Hey, what can I say? When you test negative for 4 years, essentially, and it's always been allergies, and it's, I'm sorry, guys. But yes, I've been in isolation for the last week. So
we forgive you, Teresa, as long as you're okay.
Honestly, yeah.
Thank goodness for medic. Well, here's the fun thing. If you're going to get COVID, you might as well get strep on top of it.
Ugh.
So,
oh, my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah, so when all the Titans, the firing came down last Tuesday, I had people, texting me, hey, can you be on? Can you be on? And I'm like, I can't talk right now, folks.
Goodness sakes.
So I had no voice. So, but yeah, finally turning the corner. And I look at the window and it's like, it's white. I mean, it's like the Snowzilla.
Absolutely is. I told Kayla earlier this morning, it reminds me of 2003 when we had the snow that fell like, it was 6 inches, and it was like all within an hour. Do you remember that?
Oh, I do. I think it actually happened when I was trying to go to the Titans because if it's the one I'm thinking of, it started snowing about 8:00 in the morning.
Yes, it did.
And I was, that was the week the Titans were playing in Oakland against the Raiders in the AFC Championship game. And I thought, you know what, I'll go to our bureau, which was then in Brentwood, and I thought I'll hide it out here, let people get off the road, then I'll go to the Titans. When I tried to leave, so many people, it came down so fast and heavy, people had just abandoned their cars.
Oh, wow.
I couldn't get through Brentwood to get to the interstate, never made it, went home, had a flight the next morning, so I had to pack a bag. And let's just say, as I stay with my mother-in-law in Hermitage to, be close to the airport. Driving to her place, a car did a 360 on an overpass right next to us, and it's kind of like, slow motion. You're driving by, and they're doing 360. It was like, yeah, that was an interesting experience. So usually, yes, I was really glad to make it out of town the next day. But it was a mess. And there was another time it snowed when I went to New England for that wonderful divisional game.
Gosh.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there was another big snowstorm that I kind of missed out hitting the road. So it's that time of year. So for anybody who's, have you looked? They're calling out the shovelers to keep at it in Buffalo. And, it kind of makes me glad that they're breaking ground at some point this spring on a closed stadium here in Nashville.
Yeah, they would be smart to do that up there for sure. And then we wouldn't have to be moving playoff games like willy-nilly around. Teresa Walker, our guest this morning here on RKW. So, Teresa, as it pertains to Mike Vrabel's firing by the Titans and now the ensuing coaching search, as we get more information and we understand more about the timeline, right, and the process of Mike Vrabel wanting more roster control and Amy Adams-Strunk deciding to then go in a different direction, has your opinion or feelings about this firing changed at all as we've learned more about the timeline and the process of what led to this decision by Amy Adams-Strunk?
Well, no. I mean, I still think that, let's be honest, 5 of his first 6 seasons, Mike Vrabel had this team playing for a playoff spot in the season finale of his first 5 years, and 2 of those 5 years that they didn't make it to the playoffs, it's because injuries knocked the starting quarterback out of the game. It was Marcus Mariota in 2018. It was, Ryan Tannehill a year ago in Jacksonville. If not, this team could have had a 5-year run of being in the playoffs. But, the reports that, Amy Adams-Strunk watched what happened at the later years of the Fisher era. Let's put it this way. That idea of one person having that final say over everything, and that was the worry that he was trying to get maybe too much power. It's her team. In the end, she gets to say what works or not, and that's the challenge now. Is the pressure is fully on her shoulders, and those who are helping her through this search to find somebody to, when she fired Mike Mularkey, it was coming off a divisional loss. So it was a bold move. It's like, can she get a coach that makes it better? Well, for a while there, they were better. I mean, a number one seed, first time since 2008. Things were looking great. And then the roster just took an absolute tumble. And here's the thing. She's one of the people that's in position to know how much of this was on John Robinson. We all kind of looked and presumed that it was all J-Rob when she fired him months after giving him a contract extension. And then the issues continued into this season. Now, yes, Rand Carthon didn't have a whole lot to, room to wiggle and rework this roster. So they did, and then you see David Long go to Miami and play a full 17-game season, which he did not do in Tennessee. They're behind the scenes. Amy gets to make the final decision. It's her team. And for people wondering, that practice facility, if you haven't gone by it and you drive by over there, Great Circle Road, that was her money. I know a lot's been made of the fact that taxpayers are going to be putting in the most ever public money to build this new enclosed stadium when they break ground later this year. But, she's put an awful lot of family money into the practice facility, hiring people. And yes, there's going to be some money pushed to the middle of the table toward the building of this new stadium. So this is now on her, and she's making it clear she wants it done a particular way. And so the pressure is on her and the people advising her to get this hire right. And boy, I mean, she said, she didn't want to talk about a trade because she didn't want to get in the back of the line and wait 3 weeks. The interview with Mike Keith. Well, 4 interviews in the span of 2 days. I mean, virtually though they were done. I mean, they're jumping into this, so they're moving quickly.
Teresa Walker of the Associated Press joining us this morning on RK Dub. So, Teresa, the question is where do they go next? What type of head coach do they need to hire in terms of trying to get this franchise back on track? And more importantly, being consistent. This new stadium opens in 2027. I would assume they'd probably want the same head coach at that point that may be leading their team to a Super Bowl run at that point. What do they need to do? Do they go opposite of a Mike Vrabel, or do they really just try to find the best fit, whether that be defensive or offensive?
Kayla, I think it has to be the right fit. I mean, the one word that we've heard, or, from her statements, her video, her video statement with, question and answer with Mike Keith, Rand Carthon, I wasn't there, but I was monitoring it by streaming and updating my story. The word collaborative is something that we've heard so much of since he was introduced as the new GM January 18th, a year ago. So not even a year ago that he's been on the job, and here he is looking for a head coach. So, I think we kind of have to throw away this whole idea of, she wants people that can work together. They boosted the analytics department. And I know a lot of people are like, wait a minute, we don't want defensive coordinators. We want somebody who knows offense. Did you watch the game yesterday? Dan Quinn is allegedly on this list of candidates, and his defense got absolutely shredded yesterday by a team that literally had to win in the final week of the season to get in the playoffs. So, in the Green Bay Packers. So, and I'm going to remind folks, Matt LaFleur, he was one of the 3 coaches that interviewed with Mike Vrabel for the job in 2018. And they're like, hey, let's bring him in as the offensive coordinator. It's all about the coaching staff that you surround yourself with. So I've had a lot of people say, no, it can't be a defensive coordinator. It's got to be somebody who wants that offensive mindset. Well, no, you just have to be able to bring in the right people around you to do those jobs and to what kind of system do you want to run? I hate to break this to people. Defensive coordinators know what works on offense in the NFL, okay? Yeah. It's not – they don't have to be the guys Matt LaFleur, yes, he's a guy who, was hired here and got the interview because he'd had essentially a cup of coffee with Sean McVay. He didn't call plays with the Rams before he came to Tennessee. He did so in a preseason game. but he'd never done it before he got here. And I hate to remind people, but in 2018, Titans' offensive numbers weren't that great. But right now, Matt LaFleur's head coaching record, people were thinking, well, it's just Aaron Rodgers. Well, Jordan Love posted a perfect passer rating yesterday as they put up the most points ever put up in a playoff game against the Dallas Cowboys. So I think he knows how to coach quarterbacks. So it's all about, that go on that collaborative thing. Who's he going to look at? Rand said that he wants him to look at some of the guys on this staff. Well, some of the guys on the staff are starting to interview for other jobs because, one, they can. Those guys who aren't under contract, some guys might be being encouraged to interview elsewhere. But who are you bringing in? In these virtual interviews, you can be guaranteed that's part of the conversation. Who is it that you would want to bring in as your offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, special teams? For a team that, as Ram pointed out, 7 one-score losses, that's the measure of people got tired of hearing Mike Vrabel say how close they were. That's the NFL. I mean, look at the Packers' record, okay? It's not like they were blowing people away, and the Rams were this close to joining them in the next round with a record that was just barely over 500. So you've got to be able to find the people that can do what you want to get done. And is it going to be somebody that's working with Will Levis? Can you build on him? We saw what happened when they changed so many coordinators with Marcus Mariota. It just did not help build his confidence whatsoever, and they ended up moving on from him literally in the final year of his deal here in Tennessee in mid-October. So it's all about who are you bringing to town with you.
Teresa Walker of the AP joining us now. Yeah, we had that discussion about, do you keep a Charles London or do you possibly, like Will said over here, bring in a Liam Cohen that he obviously has familiarity with at Kentucky to continue to develop him? And that's the biggest question because, Teresa, if they don't get this right in terms of the staff specifically, obviously the head coach, but the staff that they continue to try to help Will Levis develop, then you go backwards. And I just don't think this franchise can afford to do that. So do you keep Charles London or bring in a guy that has familiarity with Will Levis?
That's a great question, Kayla. And I wish I could give a more firm answer, but I think we have to wait and see. I mean, Liam Cohen is interviewing for offensive coordinator jobs in the NFL from the reports I saw over the weekend. So, he's certainly somebody that you might want. But in the meantime, you've got Charles London, who is very familiar with Will Levis, with the talent on this roster. But let's be honest, for people wondering if, they churn this roster, NFL rosters get churned, 25 players or so won't be on this roster come start of the season in September. And this roster may get churned a little bit more, maybe closer to 30 guys who end up disappearing off of this roster and being replaced. Why? Because, they've got the most effective cap space, according to overthecap.com. They've got the draft pick. They've got the 7th pick overall. But, let's face it, Amy said in her statement, she knows that they've got a young quarterback. It sounds like there is super confidence in Will Levis. So yes, I would think that having some continuity would help. I mean, let's not forget, Art Smith got an NFL head coaching job surviving 4 different coaches in the Tennessee franchise and managed to rise up to coordinator and then earned his shot in Atlanta. I know it didn't go well, but he never could get a quarterback to help him really get over the hump there. So, that's the thing. Charles London knows him. So, I think they've made it clear that they want whoever they hire to at least look at who's still on the staff and see who do we want to keep out of this group.
Teresa, on the way out, as of this morning, January the 15th, do you have one favorite candidate who you think is the strongest option for the Titans right now?
That's a great question, Will. I said it the other day. I'm going to kind of stick with it. Antonio Pierce. Yes, his NFL coaching experience is not that deep, but considering the hot mess that the Raiders were in when they fired Josh McDaniels and made him the interim, he went 5-4 down the stretch and had them playing for something, and they rallied around him. And, for people thinking it's got to be an X's and O's person, I hate to tell you, but And we saw this in the finale with the Titans. The players were playing for Mike Vrabel. The Raiders were playing for Antonio Pierce. And yes, that matters. But the reason it's so important, they're selling PSLs and tickets, not just for the new stadium, but for Nissan Stadium. So, they're doing a lot of business over there in that front office. And so it's going to have to be somebody that gets excitement. And at this point, guys, I mean, let's not forget, they did the Vrabel search in the span of barely a week, and they interviewed only 3 people, and already they've interviewed 4 people. So stay tuned.
Great stuff
Great
as
point.
always with our good friend Teresa Walker at Teresa M. Walker, where you can find her on Twitter, doing a great job as always covering the Titans and all things Nashville and Tennessee. Teresa, thank you as always.
Good luck, and let's stay tuned. I mean, hang on to the wheel, folks. It's
Right.
free with this coaching search and on the roads today, so be careful.
Thanks, T.
That's right. Teresa Walker with us this morning. Who needs to tell the new coach, by the way, that Teresa gets the first question?
I think she should, right?
Has to continue from the Mike Vrabel days.
I agree.
For sure. Coming up, a success story for NBC. Is it a success story for NFL fans? The numbers that Peacock got when the Chiefs beat the Dolphins on Saturday night in Kansas City. You probably heard Mike Tirico and the NBC crew bragging about the numbers last night. More from Peter King and Football Morning in America this morning on just how big of a streaming event it was, coming up next. Monday morning on RKW is brewed by 8th and Roast on a snowy Monday in Middle Tennessee. 615-737-1045 is our number. It is coming down out there.
Mm-hmm. Hasn't stopped.
I feel like we're in the middle of a snow globe in downtown
yeah.
Nashville.
That'd be a cool one. Maybe we should sell those.
It'd be great.
The RKW snow globe.
RKW logo on there with our 8th and Roast mugs and our little hands.
Perfect.
I like that.
Right?
I like that.
We'll get our team on that.
Yeah.
615-737-1045, our number. Looking forward to talking with former NFL GM Randy Mueller coming up in a half hour. We'll do that at 9:20 this morning on what it is like to be a GM of an organization where the head coach has final roster say, as he was with Nick Saban for 2 years, as the general manager of the Miami Dolphins along with Nick, and whether or not Mike Vrabel had earned that level of personnel control. So we'll do that coming up at 9:20. We'll reset the headlines on the 4 coaches the Titans have already interviewed coming up at 9. But guys, the Peacock game, if you ask NBC, was a success. They released the numbers for the game late last night, saying the average audience in streaming and over the air. So in Kansas City and Miami, you could watch this game on TV and not just Peacock. All told was 23 million. So that is past last year's Saturday night wildcard game, Chargers-Jags, by 6%, according to NBC. That Saturday game had 20.8 million viewers. This is now the most streamed event in the history of the United States. The record was 15 million for Dallas-Seattle on Amazon in November. And now a 26-7 win for the Kansas City Chiefs on Peacock, most streamed event of all time.
And I see how it works because guess who just bought something to watch the game in terms of the Peacock subscription?
So you didn't have it before?
We did not have it before.
All right.
And bought it. And then even Travis said yesterday, I got to remember to cancel that Peacock. But you just wonder. But again, it works because you've got a game of this, caliber, and you've always got the little elements that deal with it too. I think NFL continues to grow. And then, these people like myself, we subscribe. A lot of us forget that we subscribe because it's like $5.99 a month, I think, or something like that.
Yep.
But they're going to continue to probably get more of these games. So at this point, it's almost like you just keep it.
Well, you knew for a fact that me and Will already had Peacock because, 1, The Office is on Peacock.
Correct.
And 2,
the Superfan episodes.
WWE is on Peacock.
That's right. And soccer.
And soccer for
so
you.
That's the main reason I got it originally.
You guys had it. You were ahead of the game.
Plus, no free shout-outs, but it is true in the story that if you have Comcast, then you get 1 year for free. If you have like a Comcast TV package, or you get it, I think you get a year free and then half off. After that, I want to say, then it's $30 annually. So the deal they were running was, it was $30 for the first year, and then it's $60 after that if you want to do it annually, or it's $6 a month.
Yep.
Which to me, I don't know. Maybe I'm a soccer snob that already had it, because in order to watch soccer, you have to have it. Mm-hmm. Because now they put the Big Six games usually on there. Big Six meaning like the Big Six teams, like historic clubs in England. So in order to watch a lot of those games, like when Arsenal plays like Liverpool, like I have to have Peacock.
And you're a soccer fan. For me, like I watch all these. I mean, I've got to watch this. This is my part of my job.
Yeah.
Plus, I just love it.
You could probably write it off.
You 100% can write it off.
There we go. That's
honestly,
as someone who is writing it off, you can 100% write it off.
Perfect. Boom. You got it.
Like ESPN Plus too. I'm pretty sure you can do that. Anyway. The FBI, please don't raid my apartment. I'm not even going to be there today. I'm snowed in at work.
Good luck getting there, right?
But in all seriousness, though, I find it interesting that a lot of the complaints about this are from media members who work for subscription-based websites as journalists. And no, that's not the same thing, because this is NBC kind of getting us twice. Right? Like we already are paying for NBC. So then we're also going to take the extra step to now pay for Peacock to watch an NFL football game. But if I worked as a journalist for a website that had a subscription in order to read my work, I just probably wouldn't say anything about this.
I would quiet down.
Personally.
Pipe down.
I don't know. It's just kind of the direction. Like you could say whatever you want, obviously. Like it's Twitter. But I don't know. I just feel like $6 a month. This is where the business is going. And I think the sad thing is now that I bet within 10 years to have ESPN, it's going to be direct to the consumer. And ESPN is not going to be a part of your basic cable package. And ESPN is going to say, well, why should we go through the middleman of a cable company when we can do what is now being done to broadcast NFL playoff games? And ESPN and ESPN Plus and Disney Plus is all going to be something like $40 a month. And we're all going to pay for it. Because if you want to watch a Disney movie, a Marvel movie, or any of the sporting events of the teams that you support, I guarantee it. $40 to $50 a month, ESPN and Disney. That's where we're headed.
Well, and AJ Parkinson in the FNM Bank chat said it's not the $6, it's the point because that is what every single channel is going to be.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, and it is true.
It's
AJ.
more about where the business is going. And from that end, I do understand people that even work for subscription sites saying, look, this is the direction it's going. And cable companies are going to have less disputes with people like Bally, who I still, as a YouTube TV user, cannot get Preds games.
I can't. Ditto.
And Braves games. I've got to find a workaround for that, too, for Major League Baseball. Like, cable companies are going to have to kind of play ball a little bit because in 10 years, they're just not going to exist. And whatever channels you want, you just pay for those, fill up your cart, and that's that. So it's a fascinating beginning of Pandora's box being opened and seeing what else is going to happen with Peacock. But most streamed event of all time, and we probably all had a better view on Peacock than Taylor Swift did in her frosted over condensation window suite.
Looked cold regardless if they were in a box or not.
If you made the trip, like say you are a wife or girlfriend or family member of a Miami Dolphins player, you had a 100-degree temperature shift from the time you got on a plane in Miami to off the plane in Kansas City. It was 68 during that game in Miami, and then wind chill was negative 28 by the end of that game.
And we felt it from Tua because his play was garbage.
Not a good game for a ukulele playing quarterback.
Sorry, Tua.
615-737-1045. Final hour of the show coming up next. Former NFL general manager Randy Mueller will join us at 9:20. When we come back, there's a stat Titans fans will love. We'll reset that about Bobby Slowick and the Houston Texans on Saturday, if you missed that earlier on in the show. Plus, the 4 candidates who have been interviewed and the 5 who are left. When can the Titans talk to more candidates who are coaching over the weekend? Details on that next.
Hey, it's Kayla Anderson for the Wang Vision Institute. And while they do everything in terms of eye health, they also do things for your skin. And they are now offering intense pulse light treatments. It is a photofacial treatment, really helps rejuvenate the skin. Maybe you've had sun damage, you're seeing those dark spots. IPL treatments help you with all of that. Treatments also even out the skin tone as well as texture. Maybe you're dealing with hyperpigmentation. It helps that as well. So for more information on intense pulse light treatments, go ahead and check them out. Visit wangvisioninstitute.com today. IPL treatments create those long-lasting results. The procedure super quick. I actually had that done, and I'm planning for another one here in the next couple of weeks. Only takes 20 to 30 minutes to perform, and then you're out the door, put a little sunblock on, and you're good. So to learn more about that, visit Wang Vision Institute. They also offer a free online vision seminar. Maybe you're interested in the eye health part of what they offer. That's every Tuesday at 6:45. You can RSVP and schedule that free consultation at wangvisioninstitute.com.
What's going on? 901. Good morning from snowy Nashville and the 104.5 The Zone studios. I'm Robert Walsh. Packers stunned the Cowboys 48-32 in Dallas last night. Jordan Love threw 3 scores. Aaron Jones had another 3. Now Green Bay is going to travel to the number 1 seed San Francisco. Jerry Jones, when asked about the coaching after the game, said he has not made a decision on any coaching changes just yet. In the nightcap, Detroit got their first win in the playoffs since 91, beating the Rams 24-23. Jared Goff scored a touchdown against his former team, while David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs both scored on the ground. The Lions will now host the winner of today's game between the Bucs and the Eagles. And the 104.5 The Zone regular programming will end at 3 o'clock today as we carry the Bills and Steelers game. Kickoff is at 3:30 for that, followed by Bucs and Eagles at 7:15. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and the Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
The show has moved by quickly on a snow-covered Monday morning in the Music City. Welcome to your 9 a.m. hour of RKW. We are brewed up by 8th and Roast. We've got the French New Wave roast going, courtesy of 8th and Roast this morning. Hope you've got your bag of great coffee from your local Kroger or Whole Foods. Maybe you've stopped by one of 8th and Roast's 4 locations, a bag of coffee grounds or whole beans if you got the coffee grinder. You can go by 8th Avenue, Charlotte, the airport, or the Broadview at Vanderbilt. 8th and Roast Coffee cultivates community by the cup. 615-737-1045, our number. A morning off for Ramon Foster. No, he is not stranded somewhere on the streets of humble Hendersonville. He had planned to take today anyway, so we allow him to rest. Hope he's...
That's
right. Hope he's just now waking up.
I know. Maybe you're tuning in, Ramon Foster. Good that you picked the right day because we did get here safely and we all drove safely. I'm proud of us for that.
Yep.
But you should not be on the roads if you don't have to be today because then it just makes things a lot safer for you and other people.
Something I hate today. By the way, that's Kayla Anderson, Robert Walsh, our producer. Something I hate today are the Northerners who want to shake their fists at us and call us soft for not driving today. Here's the thing, guys. A, we do not invest in the winter tires that you do living up north because once in every, 3 to 4 years, we have a situation like this where we either have to drive or don't drive in. So relax. B, we don't treat or plow our roads the same way that you all do. So if you were in this city right now, with the same cars that we have, the same roads that we have, you wouldn't be going to work either. So, shut up. No one asked. Thanks.
Well, and I am a Northerner. I come from Spokane, Washington, which is about as northwest as you can get.
But you're not shaking your fist at us.
I'm not, because I have actually lived in about 7 different states and realized that everybody, in terms of the city they live in, grows up in different conditions. The roads are different. The way that they plow roads, it's different. So if you are here from the north, just be kind because that is not something that happens here a lot. And guess what? Even in Washington, the people in Seattle, y'all don't know how to drive in snow either. Okay? Let's just make that clear.
Fair enough.
I love everybody. Anywhere I've ever been, they'd be like, man, people don't know how to drive when it gets like that. I don't think anybody knows how to drive like in this.
Yeah, ever.
As much as I know everyone's in their car like, I could drive in this. It don't bother me. Watch me do a donut out here. But I feel like you hear that everywhere. So-and-so, they don't know how to drive in this town.
615-737-1045. The Titans completed 4 interviews over the weekend with Bengals OC Brian Callahan, Giants offensive coordinator Mike Kafka, Raiders interim head coach Antonio Pierce, and Ravens defensive coordinator Mike McDonald. The virtual interviews can begin with 4 more coaches tomorrow. and then a fifth coach who the Titans have reportedly asked to speak with on Wednesday. That's Brian Johnson, the Eagles offensive coordinator, who will be coaching tonight as Philly takes on Tampa. But the Titans now starting tomorrow can talk with Texans OC Bobby Slowick. They could talk with Lions offensive and defensive coordinators Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, and they can meet with Cowboys defensive coordinator Dan Quinn, as well, as all of those teams were in divisional round, or super wildcard round. Not used to the new branding there. Games over the weekend. One stat courtesy of Peter King's Football Morning in America column this morning that I thought was particularly positive for Titans fans. I tweeted this out earlier at Will_bowling on my account and retweeted it at Ramon Kayla Will. Per Next Gen Stats, 8 of C.J. Stroud's 21 passes on Saturday were targeted to receivers who had at least 5 yards of separation from the nearest defender. 8 of his 21 passes, not even just completions, 8 of his 21 passes were to receivers who had at least 5 yards of separation. Bobby Slowick stock up after the weekend.
Yeah, because that's one thing we always talk about is, okay, you have a quarterback, right? You've got a great quarterback as a rookie. That's kind of a gift that was given to you. But you look at the other things, like you had just mentioned, that stat, what he's done to get to this spot. And it's always, can you be consistent at that, right? You have to have that as a head coach. What I also like about Slowick, Will, is that he comes from the Kyle Shanahan tree. And Bobby Slowick actually cut his teeth getting into the business as a coach when Kyle Shanahan was the offensive coordinator with the Washington, at the time, Skins, and now Commanders. And he said to Bobby Slowick, I want you to get experience on the defensive side of the ball because I want you to really learn what it's like on the opposite side. So he cut his teeth as a defensive assistant in Washington and kind of got that experience. And Shanahan was like, okay, see, now you can move to the, and that's what happened.
Yeah.
And I like that part of his background as well, Will, because you understand the different side of the ball, not just you've been on the offense the entire time. He's from the Shanahan tree. I love that. But I also like the way he cut his teeth in the business.
615-737-1045, our number. Bobby Slowick and the Texans rolling through the Cleveland Browns on Saturday afternoon, 45-14. Of course, Chiefs-Dolphins, not much closer on Saturday night as well. The Packers with Jordan Love, who leads the NFL in passer rating since Week 12, dispatching Dan Quinn's defense in quick fashion. And potentially Mike McCarthy's job as well. Of course, no reporting on that early this morning, and Jerry Jones spoke a little bit about it yesterday, but didn't have a ton of concrete details for us. As we sit here at 9:09 a.m. on Monday, January the 15th, is Mike McCarthy the head coach of the Cowboys in 2024?
I'm more that he's not that he is because I think Jerry Jones makes these decisions and he's the owner. He has the right to make those decisions, but he does make those a lot based on emotion. And I know in certain situations you can say, well, he's kept Dak Prescott around, Dak Prescott. But when you look at the coaching situations and the embarrassment that happened to them last night, Jerry Jones is the first type of owner who's going to raise his hand and say, like, we were embarrassed and this cannot continue. And I feel like that is going to be why he would fire Mike McCarthy. This was not supposed to be a game at home where they were 8-0 this season. And you gave me the stat, I think they were 16-0 dating back to last year at home.
Correct.
Not only did you lose to the Packers, which have a quarterback in the mix for the first time in the playoffs, but you lose like that. That's embarrassing for Jerry Jones, and you know how much pride he takes in that organization. That's why I think more than not, Mike McCarthy will be gone.
Darren Ravel tweeted this out last night, sports business guy who's been a little bit of everywhere, at Darren Ravel on Twitter. Soon after Bill Belichick was let go from the Browns in 1996, he ran into Jerry Jones at a ski resort. Belichick told Jones reportedly, quote, I can coach. If you ever get an opportunity, don't forget about me. Jerry Jones admitted in 2019 on the radio that he has often thought about that conversation. I would put my money on Bill Belichick being the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys in 2024. I think it is a time and place kind of decision. And I think an 81-year-old Jerry Jones is more apt to make a change at this point in his life, wanting one more Super Bowl at least before he hands off control of the Cowboys to either a member of his family or whoever else is in that front office whenever he decides to retire or just move on from the Cowboys. It feels like if Bill Belichick wasn't available, Mike McCarthy would feel a lot better about his job today. But I think the opportunity for Jerry on the latter stage of his ownership and control of the Dallas Cowboys, I think he seizes the opportunity here and goes with Bill.
Jerry Jones might be my daddy, y'all.
That's
there
true.
It is.
Really might be.
In a situation that's pretty critical for this team here moving forward. I mean, at what point are you going to say, with all the talent this Dallas Cowboys team has every single year, that they're going to get to the Super Bowl? How many windows have they had open?
Or even just the NFC Championship
Right.
game, because they have not been at the NFC Championship since 1995. 1995.
That's embarrassing.
I'll tell you one thing. David Tepper be damned. I would have threw a drink on somebody last night if I was Jerry Jones.
Or a water burger.
You just saw how much he got fined for that.
Yeah.
Man, I don't care. We just lost a playoff game, and I'm throwing a whole jug of something on somebody.
And in a lot of ways, the control part of it does not make any sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bill Belichick is going to want a lot of control that Jerry Jones is likely unwilling to give up to someone that he doesn't totally trust. And those two reportedly have a very good relationship. Bet Online, we said earlier this morning, says that it is minus 175 if Mike McCarthy is not the coach next year, that Bill Belichick would be the guy. It feels like at this point you could comfortably say either Belichick or McCarthy is the head coach of the Cowboys in 2024. Doesn't look like Vrabel would get much of a look there.
And if it is Belichick, I think that's just for the sole fact that Jerry Jones is like, I have to make this happen. That's the guy that has won Super Bowls in New England, and I have his trust. That's the reason, right?
I would say so. Coming up next, former NFL general manager Randy Mueller will join us. He can speak to a number of important conversations we've been having over the last week, to Mike Vrabel's firing, to whether or not Vrabel earned personnel control over the Tennessee Titans roster. And as a former general manager of the Miami Dolphins with Nick Saban, and he's got some great Nick Saban stories from a column he wrote in The Athletic last week. Did Vrabel have the opportunity or the luxury of wanting Saban-level control over the Titans? Randy Mueller answers those questions and more next.
Hey, it's Kayla Anderson for the Ingram Agency. Family is so important, and now is the time to make sure you have them protected. About half the households in America don't have any life insurance, and those that do don't have enough. The Ingram Agency, built back in 2010 right here in Middle Tennessee, is here to help with complimentary reviews of current life insurance policies and assistance in closing any gaps that your family may need. So don't find yourself in a financial devastation during the darkest of times. Call the Ingram Agency, where protection is our promise. Reach out today and experience the Ingram difference online at theинgramagency.com.
Rolling right along at hour number 4 on a snowy Monday morning in Nashville. Welcome into RKW, brewed by 8th and Roast. With Kayla Anderson, I'm Will Bowling. Robert Walsh, our producer. Ramon Foster with the morning off. As we are joined this morning by our good friend Randy Mueller, former NFL general manager, with just a little bit to talk about around the league and here in Nashville. Randy, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great, guys. Good to be back with you.
Good to have you, Randy.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you taking the time. And let's start here locally, of course, with Mike Vrabel's firing and with the opening here for the Tennessee Titans. What was your initial reaction to the Vrabel firing and just now the opportunity the Titans have with a lot of cap space and with a top 10 pick to go in a different direction?
Well, we've all kind of, I think, had heard the rumors throughout the season. That's for sure. You knew things weren't they weren't having kumbaya meetings at night. I could tell you that. And so it got to the point where probably some actions had to follow, especially with the results of the end of the season. So I know Mike. I think Mike's a really good coach. I think if matched with the right front office, could be a Super Bowl type winning coach. So, but I also understand that is a marriage that can't be prearranged. That's for sure. So I think the Titans are in a really good spot. I think they've got to obviously make the right hire. The hard part for me is when you look at the landscape of possibilities, it's not always the most qualified guy that gets the job. It's the one that fits within the structure and the agendas of the people already in the building. So that can be looked at. There's no shortage of good coaches, both inexperienced or non-head coaches in the past, and some pretty accomplished head coaches as well. But you said it, they need to retool. They've got some tools to do that with some cap space and a couple draft picks. And the league is set up now to where you can get good in a hurry. I know Titans fans hope that Rand Carthon is the guy to make that happen.
Former NFL GM Randy Mueller, our guest this morning on 104.5 The Zone. And Randy, specifically, when you talk about Rand Carthon being asked now to lead a search of this level of importance after just 1 year in the building and on the job and finding that marriage that works, what has been your first impression of him coming over as the number 3 from San Francisco? What have you liked about what he's been able to do here so far in Nashville?
Well, I didn't know Rand that well. I've met him a few times on the road and actually in the 49ers building. Got a chance to see how he operates. I think it is a learning process for somebody to come from, like you say, the third chair to the first chair. It's a little bit of an on-the-job training period. And he had what I think in Mike Vrabel is someone to really lean on. Now, we all know Mike's personality and the way he is. So he maybe didn't get as much of an opportunity to lead in that second seat to the head coach, but I do think he's made progress. I think it comes down to being able to evaluate, and his success is going to be determined at the quarterback position. They've got some really big decisions to be made there, and we're going to see if Rand is up for the job or not, because that is the most focal point of everybody's criticism of where the Titans are. I thought it was interesting that Amy, the owner, in her press release said that it looks like we've found our quarterback. I don't know if that's the case or not. And so I paused a little bit when I read that. I think there's still some evaluating to do, still some learning to do there with regard to Will Levis. And I'm really not ready to drink that same Kool-Aid to say we have found him yet. So they've got a job to do still, in my opinion.
Randy Mueller, former GM in the NFL, also on the Football GM podcast on The Athletic. You can check that out. Great podcast. Randy, and you talked about that. Maybe you aren't sold on Will Levis yet, and there are some people that are not sold on him, even some Titans fans here. How important is it then for them to maybe keep some consistency with Will Levis to continue to develop him, maybe keep a Charles London on staff or go get someone who's familiar with him if they want to make sure this is their guy? Because if it's not their guy, Randy, they're going backwards again.
Yeah, and it's not the first time because, as you guys know, they picked one the year before as well. Not that that's on this regime's resume, but yeah, it's a hard job to fill, no doubt. And you bring up a great point, Kayla. It is a fine line between change and allowing somebody like Will Levis to get better at their task, at their job. And when you keep changing offenses, it does set quarterbacks back. They then have to go back in the learning mode and memorize and figure out a new system, and they don't really get to advance their own trade. That's the hard part. And I think there's going to be some change in the system, no doubt about it. But that does initially set quarterbacks back, and it's why, hey, even the great ones, Peyton Manning, when he went from Indy to Denver, brought his own offense. Tom Brady, when he went from New England to Tampa, brought his own offense. These guys didn't want to learn something new, but these young guys don't really have the cachet to do that, so they've got to take the hand they're dealt. And we saw what happened with Justin Fields in Chicago, where he's had 2 or 3 different offenses, and you see traits, but you never see really the advancement to being an NFL quarterback. So that's a hard decision that the organization will have to make. I think the truth is probably in between somewhere, Kayla, in that they have to keep some of the same, but yet add to the theory and the scheme that he can learn and advance from by accentuating the positives within his skill set.
You've kind of heard of some of the candidates that the Titans have interviewed. When you look at the amount of candidates that are out there, first and foremost, you mentioned some of them have experience, some of them not as much. Who do you feel at this point would be the best fit for the Titans?
Sometimes it's as important to get a leader of men as it is to get a scheme or a play caller per se. I tend to lean a little bit on the offensive side because you have so much at stake with the quarterbacks there that you need to find someone that can not only install a system but manage the game. And I always think managing the game is easier for an offensive coach or somebody who's calling the plays on one side of the ball or another. So I think that has to be part of the equation. I also think the staff that coach brings with him is really important. And I'll be honest with you, I really like Brian Callahan from Cincinnati, and I'm not so sure that he couldn't talk his dad into coming with him, the offensive line coach for what I think is one of the better offensive lines in the league in the Cleveland Browns. So those are the kind of packages you have to look at. Who can you get with that candidate? And I'm sure they'll sort through all that stuff. It's a puzzle that takes a lot of mending and piecing things together to get the group that gives you the best chance going forward to not only build, but to teach. You need teachers in this day and age because the only thing that's for sure is there will be change every year. And I think the coaching part is great, but the teaching part sometimes goes unnoticed in what you're getting from these guys when you build your staff.
Former NFL General Manager Randy Mueller, our guest. And Randy, when you talk about offensive coordinators who aren't play callers, and specifically Brian Callahan, the lieutenant under Zach Taylor, even a Frank Smith, who has not been asked to interview with the Titans yet, but another candidate around the league in Miami with Mike McDaniel. From the general manager perspective, what is the number one thing you need to learn about someone like that who isn't calling plays in order to feel like they are ready to take that step to become a head coach?
I think and it's hard, and it's a great point, but don't forget this, and I'll just throw this out before I answer, is Andy Reid didn't call plays before he got the job in Philadelphia either. So it can be done. The hardest part is you've got to find a way to extract from people around that person or that candidate how they are when the lights are brightest. Because you're right, it is one thing to devise a scheme or a game plan Monday through Saturday, and then someone else calls the game on Sunday. You have to try to find a way through sources, through people close to the situation, of how they most think that they will react or that candidate will react on Sundays when, let's face it, when things go bad. That's the hardest thing about these jobs, whether you're a GM, a head coach, or a play caller, is how will that personality react when things go bad, because they're going to go bad. So it's part of the criteria for hiring somebody that I think is hardest to connect the dots with when you find a coach who you really like, who is a really good leader, but he's never really called plays or managed that game within a game on Sundays.
Well, Randy, you spent time with Nick Saban in Miami, and you have certainly knowledge of what it's like being with a head coach who has the say on the roster and is a loud voice in that room, dictating a lot of those decisions. Did you feel like Mike Vrabel had earned the right to have final say here? That there's a lot of people that want to debate this now that we kind of have more information about what the setup was like with Rand Carthon. Do you feel like wherever he goes next, he, with the resume he has in this league, has earned that privilege?
Well, I would say this, and I'm not dodging the question, but more importantly to me is and I worked with Mike Holmgren the same way in Seattle, Nick Saban. It's not really who's in charge or has final say. It's how they can work it together, because I've found this over the years. If you don't agree, or if you can't agree on a certain road to take, you're better off picking another one. Because if you pick a road that you're not both on the same page on, it's going to come back to haunt you one way or another, and people end up choosing up sides. So I think if I could advise Mike on anything, not that he's going to ask me, but I've worked under coaches, I've worked equal with coaches, and I've worked as the coach's boss. The relationship and the decisions stay the same, in that we got to agree or we're going to pick a different lane. That's all.
Former NFL GM Randy Mueller with us now. So, Randy, we were just talking about this on the show. We're not sure what Mike McCarthy's future will hold after that awful performance by the Cowboys last night at home, where they were perfect for pretty much the last 2 years. So, could you see a situation where a Bill Belichick goes and pairs up with an owner like Jerry Jones that doesn't give a ton of control because he's most of the control there? Could you still see a scenario of that happening where Jerry just wants to win a Super Bowl before he's gone?
Well, I really don't. And I know all the media reports have been that is the speculation. I just don't think it makes a lot of sense for me. I know that Bill Belichick's mentor is Bill Parcells, and he kind of left there for that reason. Just the setup, the structure really goes against what those guys believe in their DNA, is that during the season, it is the coach's job to be the face of the franchise. I don't know how Bill Belichick would like it when across the locker room, Jerry Jones is having post-game press conferences at the same time. I just don't see that working out. So I guess you never know. I think you say Jerry wants to win, and I think he does, but I have yet to see where Jerry's willing to change anything or any way he does business in order to win. So that tells me he's okay with losing, but doing it his way.
Randy, there are a lot of job openings right now, and I'm just curious as to where do you feel like Nashville stacks up with the rest in terms of, for some of these coaches going there instead of some of these other places?
Well, it should be a good job. Obviously, you guys know about the environment there. The fans are outstanding. They have no issue with support. I think the business community and the revenue stream that allows these teams to spend cash on players and coaches is not an issue there. So I think that's good. But you're right. It is a competitive field right now, and there are some pretty good jobs that are open as far as coaches go. I do think that Tennessee's one advantage is that they don't have to hire a GM. There are 4 or 5 teams now looking to hire GMs before they hire a coach. So that could set the timeline back a little bit for those places. It's interesting that the Commanders acted over the weekend to hire Adam Peters from the 49ers. Now they can go to bat hiring their coach. So they're going to, I think, be at the front of the line for some of these coaches. I don't think it should be any negative to work with or under Rand, because I think his reputation is good. It sounds like people will come visit there and go through the process with them. But I think it's important for him to act definitively. And the league has pumped the brakes and had the process has slowed down now with all the directives and boxes you have to check. But at the same time, they've got to do their due diligence and kind of know in the back of their mind kind of where they want these hiring processes to lead them. So I think it's a good job. Do I think it's the best job? Maybe not. But hey, it's the one job that any of these jobs, they're not going to say no to. So you just got to sell yourself and sell your franchise, sell your ownership. And I think they'll do a good job of that with Tennessee.
Randy, I loved reading on The Athletic your piece last week about Nick Saban and remembering some of the fun stories and just going from being on the 10th tee at a Spokane golf course to then becoming
Shout out Spokane.
a member of the Miami Dolphins organization with Nick Saban. I imagine you've had the chance to reflect and tell a lot of Nick Saban stories over the last week as he hangs it up as the head coach of the Crimson Tide. What is the number one thing as you think about your couple years with him and just your relationship with him? What did he do that was so different that you feel like was so successful for his career and his time as a college coach and in his short stint as an NFL coach?
Well, for me, the biggest thing he did, and I don't know that I thought it was a positive at the time, but every day you had to show up with your ankles taped. Every day. We had no easy Saturday practice. We had no easy Friday practice. So every day you had to be ready to roll and defend your opinions and defend your decisions and defend what you say. Now, that is not for everybody. That will wear some people out. But for me, I thought it was great. I know this. He treated me really good, and he treats anybody good who does their job and works at it and is prepared and professional. And I thought that was really good. I enjoyed my time with Nick. And again, we come from total opposite personalities, walks of life, everything, but we worked very well together. And I think that, as much as anything, advanced my professional career, my time with him, because he forces you to have an open mind to listen and do things differently. And it was fun to actually learn different ways. And this was after 25 years in the league for myself. So I enjoyed it. And I'll be forever indebted to Nick Saban for sure.
And I'll tell you one thing, Randy, that coaching search when I was in Montgomery, Alabama, at my first ever full-time sports job, that was the longest grueling search ever down there in Tuscaloosa. And when he came to town, I'll tell you one thing, that first season, I was a little scared of Nick Saban, but I'm glad because he taught me how to be a tough reporter. So
I'll tell you, the funny thing was I texted him the other day after all the dust had settled to congratulate him and just say wish him well, and he texted me back, and I was shocked because this is a man that didn't return emails and he didn't text anybody for the last 20 years. So this is the technological advances that either his wife has made on him or somebody's made on him. But I was very impressed by the fact that he could actually return texts for years. Even when we worked together, I would text him and I knew he read it, but he'd never reply.
That's great.
So he's making progress. He's replying now to emails and texts.
That's great.
It sounds like Terry Saban then is responding to emails and texts. That's impressive. Randy Mueller, former NFL GM, has been our guest. Well, we're going to link that story on The Athletic. Some great Nick Saban stories here on our Twitter at Ramon Kayla Will in just a minute if you want to go check that out. Really, really good stuff. And Randy, great insight as always. Thank you so much for the time.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thanks, Randy.
Absolutely. There's Randy Mueller.
It was good stuff.
Really good perspective on a difficult scenario for the Titans, and just, I think, the sweepstakes of courting different coaches who have a lot of options. I think that's interesting. Randy sees this as one of the better openings because Rand Carthon has been here for a year.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. I think there are some other jobs like the Panthers that, you know, they have to hire that GM first, and that's an extra step. And it feels like they have what we think we'll get from them soon is that vision. And it's a great place. Like, it's a big little city where you have eyes on you, but it's not all the time. And I feel like for a head coach who comes here, who has what seems to be their quarterback, will have a little bit of time to grow. It's not going to be perfect in the first year for whoever comes here. Maybe it is. Maybe they overachieve. But for the most part, it's not going to have the expectations of a big market year one in terms of at least the national media shining down on you. So I think that's also a positive for some of these head coaches to be able to really grow this first year.
We'll wrap up the show coming up next. And again, at Ramon Kayla Will on Twitter is where you can find that story that Randy Mueller wrote. Tells a couple of really cool stories about Nick Saban and about film study on planes, always having your tablet on you, and going to the Chargers and realizing, I think he said at the very end of it, said, losing was so easy to do at LA. I'm paraphrasing a bit here, but said Nick would fire us all if we acted the way that we did with the Chargers after they spent time together in Miami. Really good stuff you can check out on our Twitter at Ramon Kayla Will. Appreciate Randy stopping by here for a couple of minutes this morning. But coming up next, an update from Ian Rappaport on one candidate the Titans will be interviewing for sure. Confirmation on who else the Titans will talk to this week. Plus a preview of the games coming up today as we wrap up the show. Coming up next. Wrapping up the show on RKW, brewed by 8th and Roast. Final call for phone calls, 615-737-1045. I don't know if it's the fact that we have a lot of football to talk about, the Titans don't currently have a head coach, or the fact that we're in a snow globe. But this show flew by.
It really did. And it's a Monday, too. This never is the case, guys. We lucked out today.
We really did. Appreciate you joining us. Appreciate Randy Mueller and Teresa Walker making time on a busy Monday morning. Today on The Zone, you will have live and local content until 3 o'clock, which is when Westwood One's coverage of the NFL playoffs takes over. 3 o'clock pregame, 3:30 kick, Steelers and Bills. And again, a reminder, if you missed last Thursday's show, Ramon Foster has made a 5-game bet in the Thursday 3 on not Steelers to cover, but Steelers money line. Who does the snow help more, Steelers or Bills?
Because they're both like cold weather teams, right?
Exactly.
And the Bills it worries me. Josh Allen still worries me. Like the turnover bug can strike at the worst time for Josh Allen, even in his home field or at his home field. So
Right.
I think it still benefits the Bills slightly, but I do not count out the Steelers in this one. I just don't.
I think the Steelers covering is a very safe bet because Mike Tomlin is a double-digit underdog. I don't have the stat, but I would imagine nobody is better against the spread as an underdog than Mike Tomlin, which gives me reason to think Pittsburgh makes this close. But I am interested. I was almost really mad because I had my friend group did a parlay of we all sent in one pick. And one of my buddy's picks was the under in Steelers Bills. And then when it got moved, that bet does not void. And so we bet the under in this game thinking it was going to be like a foot of snow, lake effect snow, like crazy blizzard. And then now it's not snowing, but there is a lot of snow on the ground. So,
Right.
Breaking sports news on 104.5 The Zone.
Go. Guys, I have been informed that Buck Rising is not going to be in studio today.
Boo!
He told Lucas that he could not open his gate and that he would be on Zoom after Lucas had to face the treacherous cold. So the Buck Rising show today will be hosted by Lucas Panzica with a at-home Buck Rising.
I dragged 20 minutes into this show. 20 minutes
At 4 o'clock in the
at
morning.
4 in the morning.
You know what? Actually, guys, I'm going to go pick Buck up. He is not going to have an excuse. I'm
Let's
going
go.
to pick Buck up. Call him right now, Lucas, and let him know that as soon as the show is over, I will go pick him up and bring him to work.
Didn't you say you didn't have an ice scraper here?
I do not have an ice scraper here, no.
What's your ice scraper going to be? How are you gonna get the
I'm
snow
going
off?
to defrost my windshield. I'm going to make sure Buck can come in and do his job. He will be here by 10:30.
Robert's like,
Well,
I'm
how, you
going
just
to
gonna
drag
do
it
the
in.
first 2 segments like over the phone?
Yeah.
Or is just the Lucas Panzica show?
Oh, God, I didn't even think about that. Can you handle part of the show by yourself while I
great.
get Buck? He said
No,
no.
he said.
All right,
He
well,
said, Kyle Shanahan, I don't see any scenario.
Dang.
I tried.
I wanted to see him drag him out of that house.
So which of the cats are going to get more airtime now on the Buck Rising show today?
I'm going to go with Moonbeam. Moonbeam
Okay.
is my guess.
Moonbeam.
More outgoing.
Good Lord. Ian Rappaport, 12 minutes ago, the Titans requested to interview Eagles offensive coordinator Brian Johnson for their vacant head coach opening. That interview should happen at some point after his team plays today, along with Bobby Slowick, Dan Quinn, Aaron Glenn, and Ben Johnson, and potentially others,
Ooh.
which is an important clarification from NFL.com's Ian Rappaport. So there is an opportunity for the Titans to add other names onto that list. I think the one I would expect would be Frank Smith, the OC of the Dolphins.
Sure. And
As
then
one of those guys.
who was Ramon's favorite in terms of his top
Canales.
guy? Canales down in Tampa Bay.
Yep.
Curious to see what he does tonight.
That is right. Yeah, Dave Canales, the OC of the Bucks, who has helped Baker Mayfield have an outstanding season and spent time with Geno Smith in Seattle as well.
Mm-hmm.
So Dave Canales, that was Ramon's first pick. I'm still just hung up on this. So Buck has, like, what is the time? Everything we'd heard this morning was that Buck was going to be here, and he's letting us down. He did tweet before I woke up, he tweeted at like 4:50 a.m. just the word no and a picture of his yard with one of the cats looking at it.
And that was before he probably even opened up or tried to open up his gate.
He could have started walking then. Would have been here by hour 2.
My goodness. Buck. Sheesh.
Now, that being said, we will shame Buck into driving, but you should not drive if you don't have to. The point is the Buck has to. So
we did. You have to, Buck.
That's right. That's right. I had some people say they were taking Ubers this morning. I don't know how that worked.
Get that the big one, the XL or whatever.
Because I don't think you can really do, like, you can't get food delivered, really.
No.
But I guess you can get yourself delivered to food if you really wanted to.
I might do that if you're having to go somewhere today. Do that.
Who do we think picks tonight? Steelers, Bills. I mean, Bills are going to win, right?
I think they're going to win.
You know what? I want the Steelers to win.
Oh,
well, you want to play them again.
I want to play them again because
hard to beat a team 3 times.
It's hard to beat a team 3 times, and you can no longer say that you swept that team if they beat you the 3rd time. So I need the Steelers to come to M&T Bank.
I'm going with Tampa. I want Tampa Bay. I mean, I want Philly to. I want them to fall, and I want them to fall hard.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
right.
going Bucks over Eagles tonight. Money line.
Money line.
Don't need the points.
Let's
Don't want 'em.
go, Will.
Bucks over Eagles, money line. I'll be placing that bet here in seconds as we wrap up the show. Fun show this morning.
Yeah, good stuff.
We will be back at it again tomorrow morning. Full show will be here. Ron Slay will join us. Austin Price will join us. We'll have all of the Titans reaction and the end of Super Wildcard Weekend that you need. Follow the Twitter at Ramon Kayla Will, as we still call it Twitter and not X. And we will talk to you tomorrow morning. Stay safe, and please don't drive if you don't have to.